Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video.
Kakarot, what the hell happened? Vegeta growled as soon as Goku opened the door. She had a really bad nightmare, Goku answered, stepping aside as Vegeta stalked in. The prince made a beeline for the stairs following his daughter's low-kai signature. Goku followed him and continued, "She's been really shaken up ever since, we can't calm her down, Vegeta." Vegeta hissed in exasperation through his nose, "More goddamn nightmares, fantastic," without another word. He strode right into the bedroom that Chi-Chi and Goku shared, the younger full-blooded Saiyan right on his heels. Chi-Chi was sitting at the edge of the bed, hugging Bra, who was clinging tightly to her. The little girl's face was bright red as tears streamed down her face while she bawled miserably. Something in Vegeta's chest wrenched. There were few things in life he couldn't stand seeing, and his children's suffering were among those few things. The prince scowled and quickly strode over to them. He reached down to pluck his daughter out of Chi-Chi's arms when Bra screamed bloody murder. Vegeta flinched back in surprise and immediately withdrew his hands. "Don't touch me." The little girl shrieked at him with an alarming venom that was far beyond her years. She then buried her face against an absolutely stunned Chi-Chi and continued bawling. "I want my mommy," she screamed. Vegeta glanced over at Goku in confusion. The younger warrior could only offer him a bewildered look. "Brah," Chi-Chi gently said, trying to pry the little girl off her. "Don't you want to go with your daddy?" "No, I don't want him." The prince ever so subtly moved a little closer to his daughter. The little girl noticed through and tightened her grip on Chi-Chi in a panic. Vegeta's stomach churned when he sensed the sheer terror radiating off his daughter and realized that it was because of him. He squatted down and tried his absolute best to make his rough voice as gentle as he could. "It's just me. I'm not going to hurt you, princess." Bra suddenly looked at him and started screaming at him. "You're evil, daddy. You killed all the babies and all the mamas and daddies, and you're evil and I hate you." Absolutely thunderstruck, Vegeta could only stare at his daughter in open-mouthed shock. He was left completely at a loss for words as Goku suddenly stepped up close to them. "Bra, now listen," Goku said, his voice gentle but firm as he frowned. "I don't know where you got that from, but your dad's a good man." "No, he's not," Bra shrieked. The little girl was hysterical as she looked at her father, her red and tear-streaked face a mixture of terror, hatred, and disgust. Vegeta couldn't name the feeling that was suddenly making it hard for him to breathe as she continued. "I saw what you did, Daddy. You're the evil one." Vegeta's brain had completely stopped functioning by this point. The miserable excuse of an existence that he had prior to his life on Earth was a well-guarded secret that everyone kept from Bra. Vegeta had of course planned on telling her one day, just like he had with Trunks years ago, but that day was not today and he was not prepared at all on how to proceed. "Bra, I didn't," he started, his voice unnaturally weak. He was being completely disarmed by a 5-year-old girl to a degree that he wasn't equipped to deal with. "Bra, that's enough," Chi-Chi said sternly. She wasn't Vegeta's biggest fan by a long shot. Truth be told, she hated his attitude. However, the man had been an enormous help to her with both of her sons, particularly with Gohan when he went through a rough patch during his teenage years. Vegeta also made her best friend happy, and by all accounts, he had good relationships with both of his children. It was the rare look of hurt on his face now, though, that was making her try to defend him. And she wasn't alone. "Your dad came over here to make sure you were okay, Bra," Goku said. I want my mommy," Bra weakly sobbed against Chi-Chi. Her small frame was shaking from head to toe and she refused to look at her father again. She had seen horrible, horrible things in her dreams, and it broke her heart. All she wanted was Bulma to come and tell her that her father hadn't been so evil, that it was nothing but a terrible nightmare, that the man she so completely adored, her father who she loved, was a good man. It had to come from Bulma. Vegeta tried reaching for her back when she flinched away from him. The prince withdrew his hand and looked away as he stood up. His body was unnaturally rigid as he addressed his old rival. "Take me back to Bulma and Trunks, Kakarot, then you can bring the woman back here," he ordered in a completely detached voice, staring out the window. Goku looked at his friend in concern. But Vegeta wasn't showing his cards anymore. He was stoic and well-guarded as he kept his gaze averted. The younger Saiyan nodded. He put his hand on his friend's shoulder, raised 2 fingers to his forehead, and they were gone. Bulma was sitting in the hospital room with Trunks. The doctor had arrived almost right after she received the phone call from Chi-Chi. Blessed with more patience than her husband, she had stayed to talk to him while Vegeta left to take care of Bra. Trunks was now sitting up in bed. He was awake and alert, and currently wolfing down the hospital food the nurse had brought him. The sedative had finally worn off, and it was only a matter of waiting for a few more test results and filling out paperwork, and then he would be released. Bulma would have tried engaging him in conversation while he ate, but he was Vegeta's son, and when he was hungry, nothing else in the world mattered. While she waited for him to finish, she looked up information on her phone regarding the girl that Trunks had mentioned. She was reading over the short death notice the school had made. Bulma frowned as she tried to determine why the girl's last name was ringing a bell. How, Bulma mused, her brilliant mind sorting through years of memories, digging for something. I know I've heard that name before. Her thoughts came to an abrupt stop when she scrolled down to the end of the short death notice she was reading. Her eyes widened as she stared at the date the girl died. She died the day Trunks was born. Mom? Trunks asked, making Bulma flinch. In shock and almost drop her phone, she looked over at her son, who was regarding her in concern. You alright? You look kinda weird. I'm fine, Han, Bulma said, giving him a strained smile. Trunks wasn't convinced, but he shrugged anyways and went back to devouring his food. Bulma looked back down and stared at the date printed in front of her. She was trying to dig up more information on her phone when Goku and Vegeta suddenly appeared out of nowhere, startling her for the second time in under a minute. Got him, Nit. Bulma exhaled, her hand over her heart. She looked at Goku first and then at her husband. Vegeta turned around into the perfect position to give everyone his back before they made eye contact, and so Bulma looked back at Goku. Where's Bra? She wants you, Bulma. Oh, Bulma said. Frowning a little, she put her cell phone in her pocket and stood up. She went over to Vegeta and put a hand on his lower back. They'll be done with the paperwork for Trunks soon. It's just protocol now before they release him. Then you guys can both go home. He said nothing and her frown deepened. Vegeta, fine, just go, he gruffly commanded. All right, Bulma relented, removing her hand from him. She went over to Goku and nodded to him as he put a hand on her shoulder. Then they were both gone. Trunks was chewing on a piece of bread, watching his father carefully. He scowled when he observed the rigid set of Vegeta's shoulders, and felt the low strumming of his Kai. There were only 2 times in his life that he had sensed his father's Kai vibrating that low. The most recent time was when Vegeta took him to train alone several years ago, and told him the honest, rough, and brutal truth of who he used to be and the things he did in his past. The only other time was the night after Boo was defeated, when the tension between his parents had been completely off the charts. It gave the teenager no reassurance to be sensing it again now. Dad? Trunks asked, his voice clearer than the night before. Most of the bruises on his body were already healing, though it would take a while for his bruised ego to heal. Vegeta turned his head a little in acknowledgement, and so Trunks continued, You all right? Vegeta nodded, and then disappeared into the bathroom without a word. Trunks sighed, shaking his head and resuming his meal. The faster he could get his strength back, the faster he could figure out what happened the night before and get himself some payback. Meanwhile, in the small bathroom, Vegeta was tightly gripping onto the edges of the sink. He forced himself to calm down. He closed his eyes and took a few deep breaths while he turned on the water. As soon as he did, the prince took a startled step back. There was blood coming out of the faucet. He quickly came back and turned the water off, watching the blood swirl. He waited a few seconds and then tried again. Blood poured out again. The smell was unmistakable. He frowned and reached one bandaged hand to touch the blood as though to prove to himself that he wasn't making this up. As soon as the blood touched his hand, the light went out. What the fuck? He hissed under his breath, walking back out to Trunks' hospital room. It was dark there too. What's going on? Trunks asked as Vegeta walked over to the window. The prince blinked as he stared outside. It was dark as night, but how was that possible? It was still morning and the sun had been shining when he flew back to see his daughter. Power must have been shot, Vegeta answered, unable to keep the confusion out of his voice. What the hell was going on? He tried opening the window and blinked in surprise when he found that he couldn't. He widened his stance and tried again, but he growled in frustration when he couldn't get a good grip because of his hands. Trunks was alarmed when he saw that his father, the powerful Saiyan prince, couldn't open a simple window. Either Vegeta was terribly ill or something was seriously wrong. He put his tray of food aside and threw the blanket off himself. Here, Dad, let me see. Vegeta snarled something under his breath in frustration, but stepped back to let his son have a try. Trunks grabbed the window and yanked hard, but it didn't budge. He and Vegeta exchanged a look of shock and unease before Trunks made a tight fist. White flames immediately surrounded it as he reared back to punch through the glass when Vegeta caught his wrist. Don't, you won't be able to, and you will just damage your hands like I did. What? Before either of them could get another word out, the PA system blasted out, Everyone, please remain where you are. Repeat. Remain where you are. We are working to restore the power as soon as possible. More to come soon. Wait here, Vegeta ordered, turning around and walking out of the room. Trunks looked after him in surprise before a look of stubbornness came across his features. He turned back to the glass window and his Kai spiked as he powered up again. The white light around his fist lit up the dark room, right before he slammed his fist into the glass window. "Oh damn it!" he hissed, pulling his throbbing hand back and rubbing it with his free hand, not having made as much as a crack in the glass. He hadn't used as much strength as his father did when he was trapped in his bathroom with Bulma, but that still hurt like hell. "That's what you fucking get, boy," Vegeta's rough voice growled from behind him, making Trunks spin around in surprise. His father was standing in the doorway looking at him in angered disapproval. "Now wait here, and try to listen to what I tell you next time if it doesn't pain you too much," he sneered. "Sorry, Dad," Trunks sheepishly said. Vegeta glared at him for a few more seconds before turning and walking off again. Trunks frowned and went about getting dressed, not planning on staying in the room for much longer. Meanwhile, Vegeta was feeling uneasy as he walked down the hospital hallways. It was completely dark. If his eyes were limited like a human's, he wouldn't have been able to see without using the wall to guide him. As it was, he was used to the dark and could move about easily. What was throwing him off was the fact that it was so empty. Where were the doctors? Where were the nurses? He looked over at the doors of the different patient rooms, sensing that people were still in their rooms, though he could feel their weak Kais spiking in their fear and confusion. Vegeta strained his senses further and detected motion upstairs. He immediately headed that way, wanting to talk to someone to find out what was wrong. Just as he was climbing the stairs, though, he felt the sensation of something brushing up against the back of his neck. Vegeta spun around immediately and landed sitting down on the stairs. Standing in front of him was a little boy in a hospital gown. The prince raised his Kai to spark light around his hand, so he could see the boy better. "It's your fault," the boy softly accused as Vegeta got up to his feet. It was only then that the Saiyan noticed the boy had a familiar brand on the side of his skull. Vegeta's stomach churned in disgust at the sight of the burned V, and then churned with something else altogether when he saw the weak and sick-looking boy in more detail. He looked like he was moments away from dying, but his eyes were chilling. Vegeta felt unnaturally exposed as the boy's dead eyes searched his. "They told me it's your fault." "What?" Vegeta asked before scowling at how weak he sounded. With his usual force behind his voice, he growled, "What the fuck are you talking about, boy? Who are you? Where the hell are your parents? They're dead like everyone else because of you." Vegeta stood up and snarled, "Get lost, boy, before I put you out of your misery ahead of time." He then turned around and marched up the stairs. When he got to the first landing, he looked back, but the boy was gone. Vegeta blinked a little before he suddenly heard screaming upstairs. He immediately jogged up the stairs, though at his rate of jogging it took less than 2 seconds to get there. There was chaos and panic on this floor. Doctors and nurses were running, some people had flashlights, and there was a lot of screaming. Vegeta could feel everyone's Kai spiked in panic. He tried seeing what was going on to see if maybe he could help. Finally, his patience snapped and he grabbed a young nurse by the arm as she ran past him. "What the hell is going on here, girl?" he demanded. "Sir, please try to stay calm. We're getting everything under control." Vegeta shook her roughly as he growled, "Getting what under control?" She squealed a little before telling him, "The Code V ward is out of control. A few of them have escaped their rooms and we think they blew the power. They also might have killed one of the doctors. Where are they?" "Sir, where?" he yelled in her face. Completely intimidated by him, the young nurse pointed in the direction where most of them were running towards. Vegeta released her and headed over. These people were terminal and it seemed to him clearly insane. If any of them were a threat to the other people there, then perhaps he could step in and do something about it. With every step that he took, the screaming and the panic intensified. His eye twitched when his nose registered blood, a lot of it. The lights flickered over him, sparking in and out, though Vegeta didn't notice that the lights were following him and him alone. When he got within feet of the main set of doors leading to the special ward, the light bulbs in the overhead lighting violently exploded, sending a spread of flames across the ceiling. If everyone was in a panic before, now it was complete terror as the flames spread at an alarming rate. The sprinkler system activated but failed to work as the flames spread down the walls and to the floor. Vegeta cursed, forgetting about what he was planning to do when he saw what was happening. He immediately turned to the fire and strode right up to it, while everyone ran around him going the opposite direction. The prince raised both of his hands and summoned up his Kai, trying to put out the flames. But as soon as he tried raising his Kai, Vegeta dropped to his knees, his hands going to his head. There was a piercing sting in his head, and it made him cry out in pain. He doubled over, before realizing that the fire was getting way too close to him. He tried backing up, but it was suddenly excruciating to move. He bit his lip hard to stifle a scream of agony as his head suddenly felt like it was moments away from exploding. Just as the fire was getting dangerously close to him, someone grabbed him by behind and hauled him backwards while simultaneously forcing him up to his feet. Vegeta turned around and put his hands on his son's shoulders. "Dad, we have to get out of here," Trunks yelled over the screaming going on. He looked at his father in concern when Vegeta leaned heavily against him, one bandaged hand going up over his eyes. "Dad," Vegeta shook his head quickly to snap out of it. He looked up at his son, one eye squeezed shut. "Stop the fire," he ordered. "I'll get these people out of here." "But Dad, do as I tell you, boy," Vegeta yelled at him, finally batting Trunks' hands off him. The prince strode off, and Trunks turned to face the spreading fire alone. He raised his hands and tried doing what Vegeta couldn't do, trying to trap the fire with his Kai. There had been a few accidents growing up where he hadn't quite been able to control his power, and the result was a fire in their home. Vegeta had always shown up and put the fire out, and eventually he taught Trunks how to do so as well. But this time, instead of the flames dying down, they fed off his Kai and seemed to come alive with rage. Trunks flinched back when part of the wall exploded. He was covered in sweat now as he coughed roughly, before he frantically looked around for some kind of fire extinguisher. While he did that, Vegeta was desperately trying to figure a way out of this house of horrors. All of the humans were gathered downstairs, with some trying to bust out of any window that was nearby. Nothing was working. He saw some of them trying to open the doors to the stairs, but none of the doors were opening. He went over and effortlessly shoved some of the humans to the floor so he could have a shot. Raising his leg, he gave the door one good hard kick and almost collapsed when it didn't budge. Vegeta leaned heavily against the wall to give his leg a few seconds to recover. The air was filled with smoke now, and it was stinging his eyes. The pain in his head was excruciating to the brink of being debilitating, and he felt the overwhelming urge to close his eyes and not open them again. Stubbornly though, he pushed himself off the wall when he finally realized he was right in front of the Code V ward. The door was wide open, flames surrounding the edges of the door frame, and standing there staring dead at him were all of the Code V patients in their hospital gowns. Vegeta took a step back, coughing roughly from the smoke. One of them, an elderly man, raised his arm as he pointed at Vegeta. "This is your fault, you brought this upon us." "What?" Vegeta coughed, taking another step back when he saw the blood on the man's arm. "They drain us of our strength to fight you. If you die, we live." Vegeta blinked in shock. "What the hell are you talking about?" He suddenly spun around when there was a loud crash behind him. The building was starting to collapse. "Trunks!" he yelled over the screams of agony. He was about to run over to find the teenager when he was hauled backwards. The prince immediately turned back around and started fighting back. He hadn't taken anyone's life in years, but right now he didn't give a shit how many of these people he killed. They were all insane and going to die anyways, and right now they were keeping him from finding his son. He kneed one of them hard in the stomach, and then elbowed another one of them hard right in the neck as he effortlessly dropped them, one after the other. But he had sorely underestimated the resilience and desperation of an entire ward of terminal patients. One of them leapt up onto his back, fingers poised to dig his eyes out while the number game started to catch up to him. Vegeta instinctively tried raising his Kai to force them all off him as they swarmed him, but the pain that seared through his head dropped him to his knees. He furiously fought back, using his brute strength as he viciously broke bones and started breaking people in half. But it seemed that for every human he dropped, another two mounted him with surprising strength. He screamed in rage and frustration. The blood, fire, and death around him was reminding him of his purging days, and he suddenly tapped into that state of mind, dusting off an old psyche of violence that he hadn't visited in years. This was about survival now, and the Prince of all Saiyans was the ultimate survivor. He worked his way back up to his feet, now leveling everyone that dared lay their hands on him with one blow each. Finally, he dropped the last patient, and then stood in the midst of bodies, half of them unconscious and half of them dead. Vegeta was breathing heavily, looking down at them with a mixture of confusion and regret in his eyes. He backed up, needing to get out of there before a voice whispered in his ear, "And they say you've changed, but a monster painted in lighter colors is still a monster." Vegeta turned around, raising his Kai even though he almost collapsed when he did. Through the thick smoke, he saw strange and dark silhouettes. "Who's there?" he yelled. His words were violently cut off when a huge chunk of the ceiling lights suddenly fell on right on his head with a supernatural and brutal force, exploding on contact. Completely distracted, Vegeta never saw it coming. He collapsed from the hard impact and didn't get back up. "Not yet, Prince." Meanwhile, Trunks had found a fire extinguisher. He was trying in vain to put out the fire, but it was out of control. His stomach lurched when he heard people screaming who were being burned alive. He had never smelled burning flesh before, and it immediately made him feel like throwing up. Finally, he threw the fire extinguisher aside. It was hopeless. If he couldn't stop the fire, then he had to get the hell out of there. He was struggling to breathe from the smoke as he tried to get himself oriented. In desperation, he tried using his strength to pound his way through one of the walls. But he couldn't do a thing. When he suddenly felt Vegeta's Kai signature drop dangerously low, Trunks ran in that direction. Parts of the building were starting to fall apart, almost seeming like they were trying to hit the teenager as he felt explosions right on his heels. He couldn't see a thing and was only going after Vegeta's flickering and weak Kai. He tried reaching to his father mentally, but Vegeta wasn't receptive to him. Vegeta was always receptive to him, no matter what he was doing, and Trunks felt his stomach drop in anxiety. Just as he was about to yell for his father, a body appeared in front of him out of nowhere and Trunks ran right into it. The teenager's Kai immediately skyrocketed and he swung out without hesitation, ready to take out whoever was in his way. His blue eyes widened in shock though when his fist was easily caught. "Easy, Trunks, Goku," Trunks yelled out. The word was barely out of his mouth when suddenly, he was in daylight. The teenager immediately fell down, landing sitting down on concrete as he coughed hoarsely. "Trunks," he looked over as Bulma rushed to him, her arms wrapping tightly around him as she fell to her knees next to him. Trunks was breathing heavily, looking around in confusion. Goku had teleported them to a secluded area of the hospital parking lot. The hospital was surrounded by a slew of police and firemen. They were all trying to get inside the building, but no one was able to, much to everyone's utter confusion and frustration. The entire building was on fire, and even from where he was, Trunks could hear the screaming. "I'm all right," he told his mother as she checked him over. He looked at Goku in alarm. "Dad, my dad, he needs help." Goku was gone before he was done with the word. "Oh God," Bulma weakly said, watching the scene in horror. She looked back at her son and forced him to look at her. "Trunks, you're sure you're okay?" "Yeah. What happened?" I don't know, something was keeping us trapped in there," Trunks said, unable to keep his bewilderment out of his voice. He looked around before asking, "Where's my sister?" "She's with Chi-Chi. She was very upset but I calmed her down. We were going to come back for you guys when Chi-Chi turned on the news and then..." Her voice trailed off. How could she describe the horrible feeling that had come over her upon seeing that the hospital where her husband and son were was completely on fire? A few seconds later, and everyone surrounding the hospital let out a collective gasp of surprise and relief when almost 50 people suddenly appeared out of thin air. Half of them collapsed from the smoke inhalation, while the other half looked bewildered to be standing out in the daylight now, as the authorities rushed to help them. The full-blooded Saiyan responsible for their rescue disappeared out of sight again. As soon as he did, the building collapsed. Goku appeared a heartbeat later next to Trunks and Bulma on his knees. He had one hand on Vegeta's chest, the prince sprawled out in front of him on the ground. Trunks and Bulma were both instantly on either side of him as Goku stood up, looking down at the distraught family with a worried look on his face. "Vegeta?" Bulma asked worriedly, gently touching her husband's face which had burns on the side of it. He barely managed to open one eye, focusing on her with considerable effort for a few seconds before closing his eye again, only vaguely aware that he wasn't inside the hospital anymore. He was having extraordinary difficulty breathing as he struggled to stay conscious. Unable to speak, he weakly reached out mentally to his son, who cursed under his breath. "He can't move," Trunks said with a scowl. He looked up at Goku. "Do you have any senzu beans?" The Saiyan shook his head, kneeling down next to his friends. "No, but it's okay, let's take him to see Dend, he'll help him." Everyone put a hand on Vegeta, and then their surroundings suddenly changed to the lookout. The prince groaned weakly, disoriented from the teleportation. Trunks patted him on the shoulder in comfort as Bulma soothingly ran a hand through his hair. Goku stood up, glancing around until his gaze settled on Dend and Piccolo. The two Namekians had been in the middle of a conversation as they stood on the edge of the lookout, before looking over in surprise at the sudden arrivals behind them. "See, I told you something was wrong," Piccolo growled. Dend frowned as he turned to face the newcomers. "What happened?" he asked, looking over how haggard the Brief's family looked. "Vegeta's hurt, he needs help," Goku told him. "Please, Dend, help him." The young Namekian nodded, kneeling down next to the now unconscious prince. Bulma and Trunks both pulled back, the former more reluctantly. She watched in concern as Trunks came to stand behind her. "He'll be good, Mom, don't worry," he said, his voice hoarse. Bulma glanced at him and offered him a smile before looking back as a soft yellow glow surrounded her husband while Den's hands hovered over him. The burns on Vegeta's face slowly vanished before his brow furrowed. A couple of seconds later and his eyes fluttered open before they focused. The light left him and he sat up, with Bulma immediately hugging him as soon as he did. "What?" Vegeta started in confusion. The last thing he remembered with clarity was staring at some strange enemies hidden by the smoke inside of the hospital. He looked around, saw where he was, and saw 5 pairs of eyes settled right on him. "What indeed?" Piccolo remarked. "Mind telling us what's going on?" Vegeta scowled at him before looking at his wife when she put her hands on his face. "I'm fine, woman," he told her, taking her hands off him. She sighed as he scanned over the lookout. Where's Bra? I left her with Chi-Chi. We'll take care of that new problem when we get home, she assured him. Vegeta made eye contact with her for a few seconds before nodding and getting up to his feet. His hands also healed. He brushed off the bandages and then tested his Kai. Now it was effortless. He frowned in confusion before looking over at Goku. You showed up. Yeah, I got you and Trunks out of there. Shen, typical, Vegeta snorted. What the heck happened? Goku pressed. Vegeta shrugged and looked away. How could he answer? He had no idea. Trunks spoke up. We were trapped in the hospital. My dad and I both tried to break our way out, but we couldn't manage it. Goku nodded, scratching the back of his head in confusion. Yeah, that was weird. I tried using my strength to break a way out for people to escape, but nothing was working for me either. I teleported as many people as I could out. Den has sensed something strange on Earth over the last month or so, Piccolo said, crossing his arms over his chest and getting everyone's attention. He looked pointedly at the younger Namekian. Tell them, kid. Well, I can't explain it, Den said, gripping his staff a little harder. It's a dark, alien aura that seems to be getting stronger as the days pass. Alien? Vegeta asked, raising an eyebrow. A chill went down his spine as he suddenly remembered being assaulted by the Code V ward. Yes, but whenever I try to focus on it, I can't. It's a strange energy that comes and goes. I can't tell where it's coming from. No one caught the subtle look exchanged between Bulma and Vegeta as Goku asked, Is it evil? I can't tell. But if what you all say is true, then there must have been something else going on for none of you to be able to blast your way out of a hospital, Piccolo reasoned. It might be the aura Dend has sensed. Lately, there have been weird things happening around us, Bulma relented. Vegeta gave her a disapproving look for voicing their personal affairs, but she ignored him. If her family was at risk, then that was more important than her husband's pride. It's like we're not alone at home. Yeah, and I was jumped last night by something that didn't seem human, Trunks added. Maybe we can lure whatever this is out into the open, Goku suggested. Then we can see what we're dealing with. Brilliant idea, Kakarot, Vegeta sneered. And how should we lure this thing out when we don't even know who or what it is? Huh, good question, Goku said, tilting his head as he tried to think about it. Listen, when I was in the hospital, I ran into some patients who had contacted that Code V ailment. Vegeta started slowly, frowning as he remembered it. One of them said that someone was drawing strength to fight through that ailment. I wasn't sure what he meant. Did you ask him to clarify? Piccolo asked. I would have if I wasn't assaulted by all of them at the same time, since they seem to believe that somehow this whole damn thing is my fault, as if I had anything to do with their illness. What, they jumped you? Goku asked in surprise. How did you get them to stop? How do you think? Vegeta snapped. No one said anything to that, and so he felt compelled to add, I didn't want to harm them. But I literally had no choice. They seemed convinced that they would be healed if they killed me. Whoever this is gaining strength might be this dark alien aura Dend has sensed. But then losing mental capabilities is a symptom of the ailment, so it's hard to tell. Yeah, Goku relented. He didn't approve of Vegeta resorting to his usual brand of violence, but if the prince asserted it was only in self-defense, then he would give him the benefit of the doubt. What do you think we should do? Keep an eye out, try to figure this thing out. What else can we do? Vegeta grumbled. Piccolo and I can pay more attention up here and see how things change, Den suggested. Do you want Bra to stay with us? Goku asked Bulma when Vegeta immediately spun towards him. I am fully capable of taking care of my own family, Kakarot. The prince furiously screamed, making Goku take a step back and raise his hands up defensively. Bulma came up next to Vegeta, putting her hand on his back and rubbing his arm soothingly to calm him down. It was just a suggestion. Just trying to help any way I can, that's all. Goku responded patiently. Well, if you two are done with your mindless bickering, we can get back to focusing on the real problem here. If something else happens, let's raise our power levels to let the others know. Just in case, Piccolo said, turning around to give everyone his back as his cape flickered behind him. Everyone agreed to the plan before dispersing. Soon, Dend was alone on the lookout as Piccolo left to seek out Gohan. The young Namekian peered over the edge of the lookout, sighing deeply. Good luck, he quietly said. Vegeta might have been healed, but he felt an inner exhaustion that he hadn't felt in years as he stared at his 5-year-old daughter later that night. Bulma nudged the little girl towards him. Bra's eyes were red from her crying. She was staring at Vegeta's knees, unwilling to look him in the eye. She was still clearly afraid of him, and it hurt him beyond words. Baby. Remember what I told you. Bulma gently prodded. It was only a nightmare. Daddy is still daddy and he loves you so much. You're hurting his feelings right now. The little girl was expecting an immediate rebuttal from her father, accompanied with a trademark snort of disgust. But when Vegeta remained uncharacteristically silent, Bra ventured a peek up at him. He was staring almost helplessly at her, not knowing how to bridge the gap between them. Without being in hysterics, Bra finally realized that she had never seen her father without his usual strong and cocky demeanor. Seeing the way he was looking at her now made her feel bad. She didn't want to hurt him. She meekly asked, "You wouldn't ever kill anyone, right, Daddy?" Vegeta's eye twitched at the question. He had killed that very day. He swallowed heavily, torn between lying to his daughter and taking her peace offering or telling her the truth. He looked up at his wife, who gave him a nod of encouragement. Her message was clear. Their daughter was simply too young and not ready for the truth yet. He slowly squatted down with a sigh. "No, I wouldn't," he lied, his mouth feeling like it was filled with sand. "And you wouldn't ever hurt us, right?" "Never, princess." Bra hesitated for only a second before shooting herself into his arms. Vegeta immediately hugged her back, dropping to his knees when he did. Bulma smiled before leaving them alone. She looked for her son and found Trunks lounging in front of the TV downstairs. The teenager was staring blankly at the TV, watching news coverage on what happened at the hospital. He looked over at his mother as she took a seat next to him. "How you doing?" she asked, patting him on the knee. "I'm all right, gonna go back to school in the morning," Trunks said, looking back at the TV. "You can take a couple days off if you feel you need to." "Nah, I need something to do or I'll go nuts." He frowned as he watched the news coverage. "That was insane what happened today." "Yeah, you're telling me it's been an insane week." Chen, Trunks, about the drinking at school. "I'm not going to tell you to cut it cold because heaven knows you won't listen if I do, but you need to be smart, no more getting drunk, you understand? You don't have to worry about that. I'm not going to be drinking at all anytime soon." Trunks grumbled. "Good, even better," Bulma said with a small smile. She stood up and ruffled his hair affectionately. "Mom," he groaned in disgust, swatting her hand away. "Just like your father," Bulma chided jokingly. The teenager rolled his eyes before pulling out his cell phone to see that he had a text from Goten. All at once he forgot she was there as he started texting away. Bulma was relieved. Things seemed to finally be settling down. Maybe the worst was behind them now and life could go back to normal. If only she knew. Bulma Brief's greatest asset in her life was perseverance. When presented with a technical problem, if she didn't get it right away, then she analyzed, brainstormed, took notes, did research, and then did everything all over again. It didn't matter how many hours of sleep she lost, she never gave up until she figured out a solution. Coupled with her natural genius, there was nothing she couldn't figure out. Hell, Bulma even carried over the same mentality to her personal life. After all, one needed years of unyielding perseverance in order to tame a Saiyan prince. Sometimes, though, she couldn't help but wonder if that same relentless perseverance was a flaw as much as an asset. This was one of those times. It was past 5 in the morning, a few weeks after the fiasco at the hospital, and Bulma was still wide awake. She was sitting up in bed, glasses perched low on her nose, her laptop on her lap. Bra was in her own bedroom, though they had a sound and video monitor set up there just in case. The small monitor was on the nightstand next to Bulma and Vegeta's bed, providing the main light in the room. The light from Bulma's laptop was dimmed all the way down so she wouldn't disturb her husband. But Vegeta was on his side with his back to her, sound asleep from his sleeping medication. One look at him and she was inclined to close her laptop, put her glasses away and lean up against him to get a few hours of sleep herself. But there was a problem to be solved and she needed to solve it. It had been gnawing at her for days now and she couldn't ignore it anymore. She had to find out where she heard about Keegan X How. Bulma had spent all night digging up whatever information she could find. There wasn't much in the news. But then she stumbled on an intriguing forum started by students at West City College. She read over the rumors and the theories the students were tossing around, but it was all mostly a joke to them. Frustrated, she was about to call it a night when an idea came to her. It was a stretch, but perhaps it was worth a shot. She logged into a remote database that had all the records of every current and past employee of Capsule Corp, from the board of directors down to the summer interns. It took a painfully long time to dig through everything, and after a while Bulma felt like her eyes were bleeding. She wasn't even sure what she was looking for until she found it. Bulma blinked a few times at her laptop screen. She adjusted her glasses to make sure she wasn't seeing things. She double-checked and triple-checked the date as a chill went down her spine. Reaching over, she shook her husband's bare shoulder. "Vegeta Han, wake up." "Chen," he grunted, slowly rolling onto his back. "I want you to look at this." Vegeta softly responded before falling right back into his light snoring. He hadn't even opened his eyes. Bulma sighed, muttered something about drugged Saiyans and then sent the file to print. She closed her laptop and got up out of bed. There was a connection here somewhere somehow between this girl who had passed away and her family. And she was going to find out just what that connection was. No matter what. A couple hours later, the sunshine was pouring into the master bedroom. Vegeta was alone in the bed, sprawled out on his stomach with his mouth hanging open as he slumbered away. But a certain someone had other ideas. The prince grunted in surprise, jarred out of his sleep when he felt a weight abruptly land on his back. "Wake up, Daddy," Vegeta groaned, cracking his eyes open to peek at the time. 7:28 a.m. He closed his eyes and grumbled. "You're just like your mother, never letting a man sleep." "But the sun is up," Bra whined, sitting cross-legged on her father's back as she pouted. "Mommy already made breakfast. Aren't you going to come eat breakfast, Daddy?" "No, why? I'm not hungry." "Why? Because I'm not." "Well, I think you're just being difficult," Bra said in her best Bulma imitation. After all, she heard her mother say that line at least once a day to her father. Vegeta blinked in surprise. The girl had done a damn good impression of his wife. He slowly pushed himself up on his forearms, looking over his shoulder at his daughter who was giggling as she rose with his back. "Don't talk to me like that, brat," he growled in warning. "I'm not a brat. Chen could have fooled me, now get off my back." Bra pouted at him but did as she was told, getting off his back and crawling over the bed. "Are you going to come down for breakfast?" she persisted. Vegeta propped himself up on one arm as he faced her, running a hand over his face to wake up. Finally he nodded and was rewarded with a bright smile from his daughter. "Yay, Grandma and Grandpa are here so we can all have a family breakfast together," Bra yelled in excitement. She then jumped off the bed and ran out of her parents' room, completely missing the look of disgust on her father's face. It wasn't that Vegeta terribly minded his in-laws. He had certainly gotten used to them over the last 20 years. He just hated not knowing ahead of time that they were coming over. The prince frowned as he slowly got out of bed, shaking his head to rid the lingering drowsiness before deciding a quick shower would do the trick. Meanwhile downstairs, Bunny was gushing. "Your father and I wanted to take Bra to the zoo today. Oh, it will be so much fun." "That's a fun idea, I think Bra would like that," Bulma agreed as she covered Vegeta's plate so it would stay hot, right as Bra and Dr. Briefs walked in. "Mommy, Grandpa says we're going to the zoo," Bra said with a bright grin. "That's great, sweetie. Did you wake up Daddy?" "Yup, he's coming down." "Good," Bulma said, picking up her mug of coffee as her Bra sat down next to her grandmother. Right as Dr. Briefs was about to sit down, Bulma slid over and whispered to him, "Dad, I need to talk to you in private for a minute." "Oh, well, of course, dear," Dr. Briefs said in his polite drawl, slowly following his daughter out of the kitchen as they stepped outside. "What is it? Does this have to do with your phone call this morning?" "Yeah, but I wanted you to come over so you could see this for yourself," Bulma told him, reaching in the back of her dress pants and pulling out the printed paper from earlier that day. She unfolded it as best she could while holding her mug of coffee, and then handed the paper to her father. Dr. Briefs pushed up his thick glasses as he took the paper from Bulma, holding it at arm's length. He studied the paper in question and then his eyebrows knit together as his eyes focused. "What is this, Bulma?" he asked, his tone more serious than Bulma had heard in a long time. "That's what I want to know," Bulma said, coming over so she was standing next to her father. "This man, Tyler X. Howe, worked here about 20 years ago for a grand total of 1 week. It says that you fired him for personal reasons." "Yes, I did. There is nothing more to say," Dr. Brief said, handing Bulma back the piece of paper. He went to go back inside when Bulma stepped over in front of him. "Dad," Bulma sternly said, and like every man that knew her, Dr. Briefs inwardly cringed at that look in her eyes. "You hired him and you fired him a week later. And from the research I've done, this man's daughter Keegan died a couple years after I fired him." "Yes, I remember I had an intern who was classmates with the girl," Dr. Brief sighed, scratching behind his ear a bit. Bulma frowned a bit. "Why didn't you tell me? The girl passed right around the time that you gave birth to Trunks, dear. You were happy. I wasn't going to ruin that with such terrible news, and it wasn't as though you knew the ex-How girl. And by the time you came back to work, I had already forgotten about the whole thing." Bulma looked down, studying the profile she had printed out. But her father suddenly took the paper out of her hand, and before Bulma could say anything, Dr. Briefs crumpled it up. "Dad, what are you doing?" "Bulma, I don't know what you're trying to dig up, but I want you to stop right now." "I'll decide when I stop," Bulma shot back, snatching the crumpled paper from her father's hand. "There is something going on with this weird ex-How family, Dad, and I don't know what it is, but I'm going to figure this out. Now are you going to help me or not?" "Daughter, this was almost 20 years ago. Look, I want to know what you know. Who was this Tyler X-How and why did you fire him?" The brilliant old scientist tugged on his mustache a bit before glancing up at the domed building that was once his home, the one he had happily given to his daughter as a wedding gift. His eyes settled on the room she shared with Vegeta before he sighed. "How good is my son-in-law's hearing?" "The best, but only when he's focusing on it." "Let's go down to the labs then, we can talk there." "All right." Fortunately, Vegeta was still showering, and so Bulma and Dr. Briefs walked on downstairs without raising the prince's suspicion. It took a while for Dr. Briefs to walk the distance, but Bulma kept at his pace. They got sidetracked a couple of times with some employees, but soon they were entering Bulma's personal office. Bulma closed and locked the door behind her before turning to her father. The old man slowly sat down at his daughter's desk, sighing in relief when he did. I don't remember that walk being so long, he chuckled. Bulma smiled a little, but it was strained. Tyler X how, she prompted as her father dug out a box of cigarettes from his shirt pocket. Tyler X how, Dr. Briefs repeated in a slow drawl, shaking his head. He pulled out a cigarette as Bulma leaned back against the door. Well, the interview went well enough. He was bright, innovative. I saw great potential. What happened? Dr. Briefs lit his cigarette and took a slow draw, reminiscing as he did. Finally, he exhaled and looked up at his daughter. The man was obsessed with you, Bulma. Bulma blinked in surprise. What? You were on Namek when I hired him. At first I thought it was just admiration, but after a couple of days it was obviously some kind of obsession. I came into your office one day to leave you some work I couldn't figure out, and I caught Mr. X how here in your office. He said he was looking for you, but he was snooping. I gave him a warning, but I wound up firing him a few days later. Why? We did a random search of the electronics division where he worked, and someone skimmed over his desk and found nothing but notes about you. Dates and facts about you, personal things. I didn't like it. Everything he wrote down was about you. He was digging for information about you beyond superficial things you can find online. That was the only reason he even took the job. He was infatuated. So I confronted him. That man went off into the crazy pool at that point. He started going on and on about how he had to warn you, because if he didn't, you were going to willingly invite darkness to the earth and bring about the death of many, including yours and any children you would have at that point. I fired him and called for security because he was clearly off his rocker. You came back to Earth not too long after that, bringing the surviving Namekians with you. And Vegeta, Bulma whispered, remembering those days before he left for space to look for Goku when they had barely been acquaintances. And Vegeta, her father confirmed, raising his cigarette again to take another draw. Bulma was gripping the mug handle tightly in her hand, so tightly that it hurt. That was where she heard the name. The security guards had cracked jokes for a couple weeks over X how upon her return from Namek. She had overheard and had always meant to ask who they were talking about, but she always forgot and the talk eventually died. There was another incident when you were pregnant and the boy had left to train in space. Dr. Briefs continued, drawing Bulma's attention again. It seemed the man's wife tried sneaking in as a maid to talk to you. One of the real maids told your mother, who told me, and we had her thrown out immediately. She again started the crazy rants, same as Tyler had, that you had to be warned about the darkness. I don't know. But we warned her that we would press charges if anyone from her family ever came on our property again. But that was the last we heard of the X how family. Then a few weeks later you gave birth to Trunks, and a few days after that we heard the unfortunate news of the Keegan girl, and that's all I know. Oh wow, Bulma quietly said, her mind racing to digest all this new information. They wanted to warn me. So they said, but they were crazy, dear. I wouldn't give them much thought. I fired Tyler X how for a reason, and they haven't interfered with our lives in almost 20 years. Bulma opened her mouth to immediately counter with what had gone down with Trunks, but caught herself at the last moment. Her father was elderly now, and so they had just told him the teenager had caught a nasty bug, and that was the reason for his much-publicized hospital visit. She gave him a kind smile as he slowly stood and stretched. You're right. It doesn't matter. Exactly. Plus, it's such a nice day, too nice for such dreary thoughts. Come to the zoo with us, daughter. She shook her head. I have to catch up with work, Dad. I'm not retired just yet, you know. True, well, all right, Dr. Brief said as he came over to her. Maybe Vegeta will come along. Bulma laughed out loud. Her husband might have changed over the years, but there was still an art to making the prince do things like going to the zoo. An art that her parents weren't talented in. No, I'm sure he'll just train the day away. I'm sure he will, Dr. Briefs chuckled as he made his way out of his daughter's office. Bulma walked over and took a seat at her desk when he did. She smoothed out the printed paper that was crumpled up. There was a small portrait in the upper left-hand corner in black and white, a little copy of the picture that had been Tyler X how's ID. She bit her bottom lip, looking at the man's picture for a long time. They had wanted to tell her something, but what? Well, there was only one way to find out. Vegeta scowled as he scanned over that same sheet of paper hours later, after Bulma's parents left with Bra. He was standing in the doorway to the gravity chamber, in his usual spandex exercise shorts and sneakers. He had barely managed to work up a sweat when Bulma interrupted him with what sounded to him like conspiracy theories. He examined the information in front of him one more time, and then looked up at his wife, who was staring at him with her hands on her hips. You really think this fool might actually know something? He asked, his brow furrowing. Well, would it hurt to find out what he wanted to tell me? Do you even know if he's still alive? Bulma sighed. No, I haven't looked that much into him. I just wanted to see what you thought. I think things have gone back to normal. Woman, really, Vegeta, because Bra is still convinced there are strange people in her room. We have the video and audio monitor. You see for yourself that nothing has happened over the last several weeks. Clearly, anything at this point is just pure imagination on the child's part. But what about Keegan X? How? She died the day Trunks was born. Something's not adding up here. I know it, I feel it, I just can't explain it, Bulma said, unable to keep her frustration out of her voice. And speaking to an ex-employee from 20 years ago will calm your doubts, Vegeta snorted, handing her the sheet of paper back. Bulma looked at him in exasperation as she took the paper and folded it up. She tucked it in her back pocket and reached for his hands. Will you please just come with me, Vegeta, for my peace of mind? She asked him, stepping up closer to him. Vegeta stayed still as she kissed his jawline before whispering in his ear, "Please, sweetheart." Shen, he grunted, looking as indifferent to her proximity as ever. As far as he was concerned, it seemed that the threat had passed them by. He was even starting to wonder if he had truly seen everything he remembered in the hospital a few weeks ago. His freak injury with the lights made him question things, but it was clearly still on his woman's mind. And so Vegeta gave his real answer by gently squeezing her hands back. If accompanying her on a wild goose chase was what she needed to feel at ease, then he could do that for her. Bulma smiled, already knowing that he was giving in to her request. She kissed him on the cheek. "Thank you, I love you, Vegeta." "I know," Vegeta blandly replied, rolling his eyes a little as he pulled his hands free and sighed. "Get the coordinates to his location and we'll get this over with. I have to go to headquarters to access the full database with addresses that far back. I'll call you when I'm there and then you can come over and we'll go meet up with this guy." Vegeta gave a curt nod and was rewarded by his wife's brilliant smile. She leaned forward and kissed him, bringing her hands up to his face while he grabbed her around the waist, pulling her flush against him. He turned her and pinned her against the frame of the entrance to the gravity room while she deepened their kiss, wrapping one leg around one of his. It probably would have gone much further than it did had they not been interrupted by a disgusted voice saying, "When are you two going to stop doing that already? Seriously, you guys are getting old." Bulma was breathless as Vegeta pulled away from her, turning to glare at their son. "Watch it, boy, you're old enough that I don't care what you see or don't see." Trunks' face crinkled in disgust as Bulma laughed. "Don't be such a jerk," she told her husband, pushing him away from her before looking over at the teenager standing on the lawn. Trunks looked worse for wear. He was unnaturally pale and looked downright haggard. Bulma's features melted into concern. "Is everything okay, Trunks? You didn't tell me you were stopping by this weekend. Are you sick?" "Nah, just been hitting the books hard and thought I'd take a break and come visit you guys and brah since it's Saturday and all," Trunks lied. He caught Vegeta's harsh glare and he instantly added, "And well, I kinda wanted to talk to Dad about something if that's all right." Bulma and Vegeta exchanged a look. The prince motioned with his chin for her to leave. "I'll handle him. You go and find out what you need to find out, then let me know. I'll meet you at headquarters." Bulma nodded, walking back down the ramp towards her son. Vegeta turned away while they exchanged a few words. Going back inside the gravity room. After a few minutes he felt Bulma leave. Not too long after that, Trunks slowly walked up the ramp, coming to stand in the doorway. Vegeta turned back to face him, but the boy was looking down, a look of worry on his face. The prince scanned his son over. Something was wrong with him. If he couldn't tell by sight alone, he would have felt it in his kai. "Well, out with it. You came to talk, so talk," Vegeta impatiently demanded, leaning back against the control panel as he crossed his arms over his chest. Trunks looked back up at his father. "Ever since that day at the hospital, something's been wrong with my kai." "What?" "I was hanging out with Goten a couple nights ago and we got into a brawl just for the hell of it. He went super and nailed me pretty good, but I couldn't bring up my kai high enough to ascend to. I made up a bullshit reason to back out of it, but when I went back to my dorm room I tried again but I couldn't transform." I don't know what's wrong, Dad," Trunks admitted, a mix of frustration and anger on his face. "Has anything been different for you since that day?" "No," came the blunt answer. Trunks' shoulders sagged a bit at the response as Vegeta ordered, "Come here, boy." Trunks walked over to stand in front of his father. Vegeta grabbed his son's chin and pulled the teenager down, evening their height difference as he examined his eyes thoroughly. Trunks normally had bright blue eyes, just like his mother and his sister. But now they were dark. There was a hint of red in the irises. Blood red. Vegeta frowned in concern, forcing Trunks' head to the side to examine the brand which was still on his neck. "This hasn't healed yet?" Vegeta asked, unable to keep the surprise out of his voice as he looked at the familiar burn. He leaned in closer and saw that it had actually grown worse. "No, but the doctors said it would take a while," Trunks awkwardly answered, father's unbreakable grip making it hard to speak. "For a human, but your Saiyan genes should have healed this already," the prince remarked, deep down hoping it wouldn't scar permanently. "Is it just your power that's off?" "No," Trunks awkwardly shifted his weight. Vegeta released him. What else then? He gruffly demanded, crossing his arms again. Trunks hesitated, suddenly feeling like he was a little boy again as he wondered whether or not to tell his father the truth. How crazy would he sound if he did? He reached up and nervously brushed the hair out of his face before stealing a glance at Vegeta, who was staring hard at him as he impatiently waited. Well, I've kinda been seeing and hearing things. What kind of things? Trunks relaxed a little bit when he wasn't called insane outright. It feels like someone is in my dorm room with me at night. I hear people talking sometimes. I see shadows moving, but then I turn on the lights and nothing is there. Hallucinations, Vegeta said, his eyes narrowing angrily. Are you using drugs? No medications of any kind. Nothing. What about drinking? Not since everything went down a few weeks ago. Why were you fighting with Goten then? It's just a stupid thing we do. Talk trash, fight a little, keeps us at least a little sharp. Vegeta was going to respond when the door to the gravity chamber suddenly slid closed. They both looked over in surprise as the lock system engaged and the lights dimmed to their red hue. Initiating gravity simulation, 100 times Earth's normal gravity. What the hell? Vegeta asked, spinning around and staring down at the control panel in confusion. I must have activated it by mistake. Trunks was meanwhile at the door trying to force it open. It wouldn't budge. He looked over his shoulder. I can't disengage this lock. You have to disengage it from the control panel. The force of the simulator suddenly kicked in, and while Vegeta didn't flinch, Trunks' knees almost buckled. He grabbed onto the lock of the door tightly, using it to keep himself upright. It had been a while since he had trained in this room with his father, and he sorely regretted that now. It should already be disengaged, Vegeta said, looking over his shoulder at Trunks. He cursed when he saw that his son was barely able to stand. Turning back towards the control panel, he tried turning the gravity simulator off. He flipped the right switch, but instead of the forces alleviating, the mechanical voice sounded again. Incrementing gravity simulation now at 150 times Earth's normal gravity. Shit, Vegeta cursed. He backed up and raised his hand out, quickly gathering up his Kai into a powerful blue ball in front of his palm. Wasting no time, the prince fired, and there was an explosion of smoke and metal. Vegeta raised his hand to protect his eyes, but to his shock, the machine sounded again. Incrementing gravity simulation now at 300 times Earth's normal gravity. The forces bore down on them, and this time Trunks' legs gave out as he collapsed, crying out in pain. Without repeated exposure to such high gravity, and especially without his Super Saiyan transformation, the pressure was completely unbearable. He barely noticed Vegeta stepping over him as the elder prince tried forcing the door open with his bare hands. Vegeta was shouting curses as he slammed his fist and kicked the door as hard as he could. His leg in his hand was hurting like hell, but there was desperation creeping in at this point. Trunks couldn't handle the high gravity incrementing at this rate, not without his usual Kai. Vegeta moved quickly, trying once again to stop the gravity simulator. The control panel was destroyed, but he knew that Bulma had put in an external power generator that was keeping everything engaged. But he had no way of getting to it. It had been years since a malfunction like this, and even still he should have been able to blast his way out. The prince was covered in sweat, his knuckles raw and bloodied from his futile attempts to break through as his heart pounded hard in his chest. His damned claustrophobia was crawling to the surface as he glanced at Trunks, who was struggling valiantly to get to his hands and knees. Think, Vegeta silently urged himself. As if on cue, he suddenly thought of Goku. Yes, that was it. If he raised his power, he would draw the attention of his old rival. The younger Saiyan could arrive and teleport them out. Incrementing gravity simulation. Now at 450 times Earth's normal gravity, Trunks fell face down and screamed in pain, but as soon as he thought he was going to get crushed to death, he felt new strength running through his blood. It took a moment to realize that the golden light next to him was his father. Vegeta was kneeling next to him, his hands on his back as he transferred him some of his own Kai. Trunks, listen to me. You have to focus on your Kai. Vegeta told his son urgently. The only way out is if we draw Kakarot's attention. I need all my power to do that, so I can't do this for long. You have to concentrate, you hear me? Okay, Trunks shakily said as Vegeta easily hauled him up to his feet. Your own Kai is still there, I can feel it. Just focus on it, Vegeta ordered through grit teeth, his glowing hands on Trunks' shoulders. While 450 times Earth's gravity was definitely manageable for the Saiyan Prince, sharing enough energy so his son wouldn't get crushed, while retaining enough for himself was rapidly draining him. Incrementing gravity simulation. Now at 600 times Earth's normal gravity. Oh shit, Trunks thought drearily. Dad, I can't. Yes, you can now. Focus, goddammit. Vegeta yelled almost in Trunks' face. Trunks nodded, closing his eyes. He reached up and grabbed Vegeta's arms to brace himself as he forced himself to power up. There was a burst of wind that suddenly surrounded father and son as Trunks' Kai rapidly climbed, aided by Vegeta continuing to transfer his own Kai. With his father's help, Trunks finally tapped into his power for the first time in weeks. Like an exhausted runner with the end of a marathon in sight, Trunks forced his Kai to rapidly skyrocket the last amount necessary to reach his Super Saiyan transformation as his hair finally flashed gold and his eyes teal. Right as the golden light exploded around Trunks, the forces lifted as the simulator died. The red lights turned off. But Trunks' scream of agony echoed off the walls. Vegeta fell down hard from the force of Trunks' transformation. The prince sat up, staring wide-eyed at his son as Trunks staggered backwards. The teenager's Kai was now skyrocketing out of control, and his usual golden aura was a sick red color that made Trunks look like he was being burned alive. Before Vegeta could even think of what to do or what to say, Trunks sank to his knees and screamed again, his hands going up to his head. Vegeta was immediately there on his knees in front of him as Trunks bent over so his head was on the floor. "Trunks, what's wrong?" Vegeta asked worriedly, putting a hand on his son's back. The prince immediately withdrew his hand. Trunks' Kai was untouchable with red-hot heat. Vegeta grit his teeth, feeling his hands burning as he tried raising his son's head so they could make eye contact. "Come on, Trunks, focus, get control back," Vegeta ordered, sounding calmer than he felt. Trunks lowered his hands as his power surged past Super Saiyan 2, his fingers spreading cracks in the floor. Red sparks shot up around him, violently zapping the air and burning his father's skin. Still, Vegeta didn't flinch as he grabbed the sides of his face and tried for eye contact again, not even noticing when Goku suddenly appeared next to him. "What the heck?" Goku asked, blinking in shock at the sight of Trunks. The teenager was screaming himself hoarse in raw anguish, looking like he was literally on fire as the walls around them shook. "Look at me, son," Vegeta urged Trunks, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice, ignoring the presence of his fellow Saiyan with them. "You have to get your power under control right now." Real fear shot down the prince's spine when Trunks finally looked up at him. His pupils were fully dilated and blood red. The teenager's aura flared up with red and angry flames that singed Vegeta's hands, forcing the prince to let go. Vegeta fell backwards from the force again, landing sitting down. Goku immediately stepped in, kneeling down behind Trunks and grabbing the teenager by the shoulders. His intention had been to try to leech off some energy that the boy was unleashing to help him get his power under control. But as soon as Goku touched him, Trunks' Kai dropped to nothing and his aura disappeared. The teenager promptly vomited as Vegeta came up next to him again. The prince shoved Goku away before putting one arm under his son's chest to support him. Trunks was shaking uncontrollably, drenched in sweat as he continued heaving until he wasn't throwing anything up anymore. "What happened, Vegeta?" Goku asked again in bewilderment. "I don't know," came the honest reply. The prince frowned in concern before gently pulling his son backwards. As soon as he did, Trunks' eyes rolled back and he slumped in his father's arms. "Trunks!" Vegeta yelled out in alarm. He laid the teenager down on his back and felt his forehead. Trunks was burning up and still shaking. Vegeta was about to make an attempt at rousing the boy when he caught sight of something that had not been there a few minutes ago. He turned Trunks' head to the side, brushing his hair out of the way to get a better look, before whispering, "Oh no!" Goku knelt down on the other side of Trunks. He felt the boy's temperature in concern before looking up at Vegeta, who had visibly paled. "Vegeta, what's wrong?" Goku asked worriedly. He couldn't remember the last time he saw that look on the prince's face. Outside, thunder rolled and they could both hear the drops of rain hitting outside of the chamber. When Vegeta didn't answer him, Goku leaned over to see for himself what his friend was looking at. His eyes widened in surprise. There, half obscured but still visible through Trunks' lavender hair, was the burned V right over the boy's temple. It looked fresh, like someone had done it to him only moments ago. "That's the mark of that virus. No, don't you even fucking say it, Kakarot." Vegeta hissed angrily. He shook his head. "He has Saiyan blood. He's too strong for that shit. It's nothing," he forcefully said, trying to convince himself more than Goku as he reached down to feel Trunks' pulse under his jaw. It was way too fast and way too weak. "Shit," he muttered under his breath, not even attempting to hide the concern that was quickly overwhelming him. "I'll take us to the lookout. Den can heal him of whatever he has," Goku calmly suggested. Vegeta didn't even think twice. "Do it," he ordered, putting a hand on his son's chest. Goku did the same, then put 2 fingers up to his forehead and they were all gone. "That is so weird," Bulma mumbled to herself as she looked out the window of her office at Capsule Corp's headquarters. When she left home, it was bright and sunny outside. It had taken her half an hour to reach headquarters and dig through the database to find the information she needed. In that time, the sky had darkened to the point that Bulma had momentarily panicked, thinking she had wasted all day there. It was dark as night, and there were flashes of lightning in the sky. There were droplets of moisture already beginning to litter her window. Bulma frowned in confusion at the weather before turning away as she waited for Vegeta to answer the home phone. She had already tried his cell phone, but that hadn't worked either. Finally, she sighed and hung up. So much for that, the jerk, I should have known, she grumbled to herself, thinking Vegeta left and forgot about their plan. Either that or he changed his mind and didn't feel like joining her anymore. Regardless of his reasons, Bulma wasn't about to let her husband ruin her plans. If he wasn't going to accompany her, then she was simply going to have to investigate things on her own. It was that simple. Bulma looked up directions to the address that she found online and then printed them out. It was only a 20-minute drive in her car, not too bad. She stared down at the address while she sat at her desk. The man was obsessed with you, Bulma, her father had said. Bulma swallowed. A ball of anxiety developing in the pit of her stomach. Reaching underneath her desk, she felt around a bit until her fingers found steel. A moment later, she pulled out a loaded handgun. After all, genius billionaires needed a backup plan in case a certain Saiyan prince wasn't nearby and all security measures failed. And she certainly wasn't going to face a potential nutcase with only her gorgeous smile backing her up. Bulma tucked the gun nonchalantly into her purse, walking with a sense of purpose as she exited the building. By the time she stepped outside, it was pouring heavily. She used her purse to shield herself from the rain as best she could, running and splashing her way over to her car. Great! I just had to wear these new pants today, Bulma angrily hissed under her breath while she fumbled with her keys next to her car. If the stupid weatherman had mentioned it was going to rain today, Bulma shrieked in fear when she heard footsteps suddenly charging up behind her. A visible silhouette appearing in the glass of driver's window. She spun around, her heart pounding as she fell back against the car, but there was no one there. Bulma looked around frantically, but her car was the only vehicle in the lot. Bulma was clutching her purse tightly to her chest before cursing quietly. "Keep it together, girl," she whispered to herself, willing her heartbeat to slow down. Despite her efforts, Bulma looked like a woman about to be mugged as she rapidly unlocked her car door, with frantic glances over her shoulder every few seconds. Finally, she got into her car, instantly closing and locking the door. She sighed in relief, closing her eyes for a few seconds. Once she regrouped, she started the car and drove off. After about 10 minutes, she had calmed down. She would have made better time in her hover jet, but having lent the vehicle to her parents for the day, she followed her instructions carefully as she drove along an empty highway. When she was about halfway there, she tried to turn on the radio, but there was nothing but white noise on every station. Bulma took her eyes off the road for one split second to squint through the rain at a passing exit sign. When she looked back, there was a child standing in the middle of the highway with red eyes. Bulma screamed and immediately swerved the car. She tried regaining control, but the roads were too slippery, and the car spun out, tires screeching. The car suddenly flipped over itself and went airborne, and then Bulma's world went black. Vegeta was furiously pacing back and forth, hovering over Dend as he tried to heal Trunks. Each moment that passed intensified his concern and panic. The talented Namekian had been helping Trunks for a while now, and the boy still hadn't come to. Vegeta clenched his hands into tight fists, increasing his relentless pacing as he tried to consider his options. But if Trunks had indeed come down with Code V, he didn't have many options. He and Goku had used the last Senzu beans after a spar, and they would take weeks to be in season again. But the virus was as fast as it was fatal. He remembered watching the newscast and hearing them say that on average, people died between 4 and 7 days after showing the nasty V-shaped rash. And as much as Vegeta tried to rationalize to himself that his son was too strong to die because of a strange virus, he couldn't help but remember that Goku had died in the alternate future timeline from a heart virus. His stomach churned at the thought of his only son dying. He grit his teeth watching the soft yellow glow around Dend and Trunks when his patience finally snapped. "What the fuck, boy? Why haven't you healed my son yet?" Vegeta yelled furiously. He advanced on Dend, but Goku was suddenly right in front of him. "Be patient, Vegeta," Goku calmly told him. "Dend will help Trunks, he just needs time." "Needs time?" Vegeta screamed in his face, pointing down at Dend. "We've been here for almost 15 fucking minutes. How much more time does he?" "I am trying," Dend cut in, his voice matter of fact. His eyes were closed in concentration. "This ailment is strange. It is resistant. I rid it and it comes back like a virus almost immediately, and then it takes more of my strength to rid it again. But it keeps coming back. It's not normal. It's like it's being controlled by someone else. I don't care. Heal him," Vegeta ordered, his tone harsh and threatening. He shoved Goku hard in the chest, but the younger Saiyan didn't budge an inch. Vegeta sneered at him and then resumed his relentless pacing. Goku watched him in concern before looking down at Trunks and Dend. He crossed his arms, his expression a mixture of confusion and worry. He had also heard quite a bit about the strange virus from Gohan, but like Vegeta, he hadn't thought a half Saiyan could come down with it. Finally, almost 10 minutes later, Dend lowered his hands to the marble floor as the light disappeared. The Namekian was exhausted and more than a little concerned when Trunks barely stirred. "I can't use my healing powers anymore," Dend regretfully informed them as Vegeta came around to kneel down next to Trunks. "What do you mean?" Goku asked, his brows furrowing as he watched Vegeta check his son. "You've drained them." "I don't know. But I can't summon anything more to help for some reason. That's never happened before. You barely did anything for him," Vegeta yelled in disbelief. He had one hand on Trunks' forehead and the other brushing the boy's hair out of the way. Trunks' temperature was even higher than before they brought him to the lookout, and the V-shaped burn on his temple had only gotten worse. The teenager was still unresponsive. The prince looked up, and Dend shrank back a bit at the fury in his eyes that he hadn't seen Vegeta wear since their days on Namek. "I did what I could, Vegeta," Dend tried to defend himself. "It's even drained my powers. I gave Trunks everything I had." "Yes, lots of good that did," Vegeta snarled. Goku felt the prince's kai bristling with rising rage and stepped forward to defuse things. Vegeta then tried his best. Goku told him, "Now's not the time to get mad, we have to think about how to help Trunks. Dend can't heal him and the Senzu beans aren't ready. Do you want me to teleport him to the hospital in East City? They're not done with the reparations to West City Hospital yet, I don't think." Vegeta reached up to rub his eyes with 2 fingers, forcing himself to take his personal emotion out of the situation and think rationally. He was debating whether or not the infirmary at Capsule Corp was equipped to handle a potential case of Code V, when his heart suddenly felt like it leapt up to his throat, and a crippling anxiety spread through his blood like wildfire. Goku and Dend exchanged a brief look when Vegeta shot up to his feet, the color draining from his face. The prince spun away from all of them and quickly strode over to the edge of the lookout. He peered down and tried his hardest to focus on sensing Bulma. Her kai blended with Billions, but he could pick her out if he knew where to look. With enormous mental discipline, the prince focused on the Capsule Corp headquarters building, and then stretched his senses out for miles and miles from there. He couldn't feel anything. Vegeta immediately started pacing, his pace frantic as he ran one shaking hand through his hair. If Dend and Goku wouldn't have been there, he didn't know if he would have been able to keep it together. He looked back at Trunks before raising his eyes to Goku. "Take him to the hospital, but don't leave him, you hear me?" Vegeta finally ordered. The memory of what happened at West City Hospital still fresh in his mind. "Sure thing, don't worry, I'll take him and stay with him, Vegeta, I promise." "But where are you going?" Goku started, but Vegeta's golden aura exploded around him and he was gone before he could finish his question. "What do you think that was about?" Dend asked in bewilderment. "I don't know," Goku softly answered, looking down at Trunks. "But it can't be good." Vegeta's heart was pounding as he flew through what was now an intense thunderstorm. Lightning was cracking and he bitterly wondered if it would strike him down with how this horrible day was unfolding. When he finally landed in the parking lot of Capsule Corp headquarters, he couldn't stop his jaw from going slack. The enormous building was completely on fire with flames that seemed to have a life of their own. It was pouring heavily outside, and he had no idea how the fire was still burning so defiantly in the face of such a thunderstorm. There was a slew of firefighters already there, trying to put out the flames to no avail. Vegeta did a quick scan of the parking lot and was relieved when he saw that Bulma's car wasn't there. That meant she wasn't there, but then where was she? The prince again stretched out his senses, but he couldn't feel anything except more panic. His head in particular was starting to hurt. He angrily shook it off and shot into the air again, surveying the roads as he rapidly converted how far she could have gotten at max speed in her car. Since it was raining, there was no way she could have gone that fast, so he could have at least some kind of radius to limit his search. From his elevation, he could see that only 2 highways were open with this weather. He picked one randomly and flew off in that direction. Vegeta squinted through the rain, his sensitive hearing picking up ambulance sirens and firefighters. He quickened his pace, again stretching out his senses to feel for Bulma. As soon as he did, though, he stopped flying as his hands went to his head. He cried out in pain, his golden hair fading back to black. It felt like knives were digging into his skull and he couldn't breathe. He cried out again as the pain intensified and became excruciating. He didn't realize he had fallen from the air until his knees hit the concrete highway hard. The prince leaned forward on his hands and knees, remembering this pain all too well from the hospital weeks ago. His fingers were digging into the concrete as he tried getting it under control. He had to get up. Right as he was about to force himself up, there were lights on him. He looked up, barely in time to recognize that a truck was barreling straight towards him. A human wouldn't have had enough time to avoid a brutal death, but Vegeta wasn't human. He half-dove, half-rolled out of the way, roughly falling off the side of the road on the grass while the truck driver screamed curses out the window at him. Vegeta forced himself up to his hands and knees again, grinding his teeth together, one eye squeezed shut in agony. When he looked up again, he saw a boy standing in the middle of the highway right where he had been a moment ago. The prince squinted, trying to get a better view, but it was raining so heavily that he couldn't make out any features on the kid at all. He was nothing but a dark gray silhouette. Prince Vegeta, the child ominously spoke. Vegeta raised an eyebrow. The boy's voice sounded like a chorus of children all chanting together. He shook his head rapidly, thinking it must have been in his mind. The boy extended his hand to Vegeta, pointing right at him as he continued, "You will die, but not yet. Your family will die first." Vegeta growled low in his throat. No one threatened his family and lived to tell about it. He forced himself back up to his feet, his pain be damned, and charged right at the kid. The prince flew right at him, but met nothing but air as he crashed back onto the concrete, landing hard on his face. The taste of blood immediately filled the back of his throat. He quickly rolled onto his back, making sure no cars were coming, but the highway was deserted with such bad weather. Vegeta wiped the blood off his face as he looked back towards the middle of the road. The boy was standing there again, nothing but a shadow in the rain. The prince backed up a little, trying hard to suppress the chills going down his back. He couldn't sense any Kai from the boy at all. "Who the hell are you?" Vegeta finally demanded. He went to stand, but the pain flared in his head and he dropped to his knees again. The prince clenched tight handfuls of his wet hair, trying to stifle the scream of anguish that was building up in his throat. "Just because you found love and peace does not mean you deserve love and peace, Prince Vegeta. Actions have consequences, and you must pay for what you've done." "What?" the prince rasped, looking back up and squinting through the heavy rain. There was no one there anymore. Utterly confused now, Vegeta tried to stand, but he quickly fell back down to the concrete. This time he couldn't help it as he screamed so loud his chest hurt. It felt like his head was literally about to explode, an unbearable piercing pain overwhelming him. He rolled over onto his stomach, squeezing his eyes shut as he held onto the back of his head. Suddenly, he felt light on him. Turning his head, he squinted and saw another truck barreling down the road towards him. Cursing under his breath, Vegeta tried to get up and dive out of the way again, when it felt like 1,000 invisible hands grabbed onto him and forced him back down, holding him in place. Vegeta panicked and tried raising his Kai, but it only made the pain in his head increase so badly he felt like he was going to pass out. Completely out of time, with the truck only several yards away, Vegeta looked away and closed his eyes, bracing himself for the impact. But the impact never came. The prince looked back only to see that the truck had stopped cold. In between him and the truck was a man in a powerful golden aura, on one knee with one hand against the steel of the truck. Vegeta slowly sat up, brushing the hair out of his face. "I didn't ask for your help," he grumbled. The pain in his head had vanished as quickly as it came, but it left him feeling slightly dazed. He raised one hand and easily summoned up his Kai, much to his confusion. "I know, but it looked like you could use it," Gohan answered as he stood up, his hair fading back to black. He waved awkwardly to the truck driver and shouted out, "Sorry. Hero complex just like your father," Vegeta sneered, getting back up to his feet as fast as he could. He prowled the road, looking in all directions as he tried getting some kind of scent or trace of who he had spoken to. He looked like a madman to any outsider, which included Gohan. "Vegeta, are you all right?" Gohan asked worriedly, coming up next to the prince as the truck slowly began driving again. The Saiyan hybrid looked him over in concern. Vegeta was still in his spandex training shorts and gym shoes, and there was a relentless stream of blood running out of his nose, enough to be noticeable even in the heavy rain. Vegeta looked frazzled as his eyes darted around the now deserted road, even though Gohan couldn't see or sense anyone. Gohan's worry increased when Vegeta closed his eyes and raised a hand to his forehead as though in pain. "Vegeta," he pressed again. The prince ignored him, suddenly remembering why he was even over this road in the first place. Cold fear shot through him when he recalled the strange boy threatening his family. Bulma, he had to find Bulma. Without wasting any more time, he immediately powered up, his eyes flashing teal as his hair tinted gold. Just as fast, Gohan appeared right in front of him, grabbing him firmly by the shoulders before Vegeta could take to the air. The prince instantly knocked Gohan's hands off, his eyes furious. "I don't have time for your bullshit, boy, Vegeta, you have to come with me," Gohan firmly stated. He hesitated a second before quietly saying, "My dad sent me for you, it's Bulma." Vegeta charged through the doors to the hospital in E-City, damn near knocking an exiting couple over. Gohan was right on his heels and he apologized to the angry couple while Vegeta paused. The prince focused, stretching out his senses once again. He immediately placed Goku and then picked up Trunks. He tried hard to pick up anything for Bulma, and when he couldn't, he frantically spun back towards Gohan. Gohan had no time to react before Vegeta shoved him hard against the wall, brutally burying his forearm into his throat. "You said she was here, so where the fuck is she?" Almost on cue, Goku appeared out of nowhere. He hardly looked surprised at the scene in front of him, putting a hand on Vegeta's shoulder. "They're helping Bulma and Trunks right now. I know it's hard, Vegeta, but you have to stay calm, or you'll get kicked out of here and that won't help anyone." Vegeta slowly took his eyes off the red-faced and choking Gohan, looking at Goku out of the corner of his eye. He finally removed his arm from Gohan's throat, making the hybrid Saiyan double over as he coughed roughly. Vegeta clenched his fists painfully tight, turning around to face his old rival. "I can't sense her," he bluntly spat out. "I know I can't either," Goku gently said, not missing how rough Vegeta looked already. The prince was dripping wet from the rain. His hair was clinging to his face was bruised, and his nose was bleeding so badly the blood was smearing on his chest. There was even more blood seeping through his fingers from how hard he was clenching his fists. "She's in surgery right now. It was an ugly accident, but she is alive, Vegeta. She's not in good shape, but they did say that everything's going okay so far." Both Gohan and Goku could see some tension leave Vegeta's shoulders at that, but it wasn't much. The prince cocked his head up towards the ceiling before demanding, "And Trunks?" Goku scratched the back of his head, eyeing Vegeta up and down warily. "Why don't we get you some dry clothes first and maybe get your nose looked at, Kakarot?" Vegeta growled through clenched teeth, his warning clear. "They diagnosed him with the code V virus," Goku reluctantly said. "They're trying as hard as they can to see what they can do for him, but well, there's no cure and it's been fatal up until now, so they said it's best to probably prepare for the worst." He stopped and waited for a reaction or a response from Vegeta. When he got nothing back at all, he frowned and added, "Don't worry though, Trunks is half Saiyan, he'll beat it. Plus we have the Dragon Balls," Gohan piped up from behind Vegeta. "Except this is a disease. So they won't work," Vegeta said, suddenly sounding exhausted. He knew he should have been feeling more, but it was as though his mind had had all the emotional stress he could handle for one day. The only thing he knew right now was that he needed to sit down. "Well, we'll try it anyways. We'll figure something out," Goku said, trying to sound as optimistic as he could. "Vegeta, your hands," Gohan whispered, looking at the prince's clenched fists. His knuckles were badly ripped from trying to get out of the gravity room earlier, and fresh blood was dripping on the floor now. "I'm fine," Vegeta mechanically responded. "We also got a hold of Bulma's parents," Goku added. "They're stranded right now with the weather since the roads are closed for the most part. They're okay and so is Bra. One of them will be by as soon as they can." Vegeta's heart sank and his shoulders fell. He had been so concerned with Trunks and Bulma that he had forgotten about his in-laws and his own daughter. As relieved as he was to hear that, he couldn't help but feel guilty that he hadn't thought of them before Goku brought them up, especially Bra. What kind of father was he anyways? It was a blow he didn't need, and all he could do was nod numbly in response and walk away. He didn't know where he was heading, but he wasn't heading there alone because Gohan and Goku were both quickly walking at his side. Vegeta was silent, feeling like he was in a daze as they completely overwhelmed him with information. They told him he needed to be checked out because Code V was contagious. They started giving him details about Bulma's car accident. They started giving him details about her condition. They started asking him if he knew about the fire at headquarters. They informed him that the media was surrounding the hospital and that they wanted a word with him. When they saw the blank way he stared back at them, they offered to have someone take care of it for him. Vegeta's head was swimming as he suddenly found himself sitting down with a doctor in his face. He blinked, only noticing where he was when the doctor started examining his bloodied nose. Goku and Gohan were still hovering, and resumed firing information at him as soon as the doctor left. Goku informed him that Dend still hadn't regained his healing powers for some strange reason, but that as soon as he did, they could have him help Bulma. Gohan told him that he would follow up with the Senzu beans and let him know when the next crop was ready. The prince sat in silence, staring at his hands as a nurse came in to bandage his bloodied palms and ripped knuckles. He was reminded of Bulma while she did. His head was starting to hurt again and the day wasn't even close to being over yet. Over an hour later, Gohan walked up to Vegeta, who was sitting alone in the waiting room. The prince was dressed now. Since Goku had teleported back to Capsule Corp and gotten him some dry clothes. His hair was dry and standing up again, but he still looked disheveled. He was also sporting a strip of a bandage across the bridge of his nose, which was still swollen but not broken. Goku was now speaking to the rest of the gang, who had by now gotten word of what happened. Goten was keeping Trunks company in his hospital room. But Vegeta still had yet to go see his son himself. Bulma was still being treated, and they were still waiting to hear more on how she was doing. Gohan was trying to keep the look of worry off his face as he sat down next to Vegeta. The prince hadn't said one word, staying silent even when Gohan had subtly steered him towards a doctor who could look him over. By all accounts, it looked like Vegeta had shut down and was running completely on autopilot. "Here, Vegeta, I got you a hot chocolate," Gohan quietly said, offering Vegeta a white styrofoam cup filled with hot liquid. Vegeta mechanically reached out and took the cup, holding it by the top circled edge with his fingertips. He was staring at the television like he had been since he sat down, looking like he had no intention of drinking the hot chocolate. Gohan looked towards the TV too, and they both numbly watched the TV for a while. "Everything will be all right," Gohan finally said, feeling compelled to offer support. Heaven only knew that if Videl and Pan were both hurt at the same time, he would be a complete wreck. Gohan cleared his throat and suggested, "Maybe going to see Trunks will make you feel better." Vegeta didn't answer. It didn't even seem like he was aware that someone was next to him. Gohan sighed and was about to check his phone to see if he finally had reception when Vegeta finally spoke. "This was all planned out," he quietly said. Looking down at the cup of hot chocolate in his bandaged hands, he frowned, his eyes clouded. "This has been planned out from the very beginning." "What?" Gohan asked, raising an eyebrow. "What was all planned out?" "He must have been a teleporter," Vegeta mused, slowly twirling the cup in his hand. He stopped that immediately when he was reminded of Frieza. He scowled as he continued, "That is the only reason for his speed, but he did something to me. Some kind of mind-controlling powers." "What? Who did something to you?" "Maybe he was the same one from the fire." "Yes, that must be it, but why, how, who was he?" "Someone from an old planet." It didn't sound like he was alone with such a strange voice. "But everyone always died. I am sure of it. I made sure of it, didn't I?" "Vegeta, are you all right?" Gohan asked, wondering if maybe his friend was a little more physically hurt than having just a busted nose. He was making no sense and wasn't responsive to him. It didn't help that Vegeta fell silent with his eyes glazed over at that exact moment. Gohan put a hand on Vegeta's shoulder, and Vegeta finally snapped, dropping the cup of hot chocolate. Gohan quickly had his arm nearly ripped off as he was lifted up and slammed hard against the wall for the second time that day, face first this time. He winced as Vegeta painfully twisted his arm behind him. "I will only tell you this once. Keep your fucking hands off me, boy," Vegeta snarled from behind him, quickly drawing the attention of the other warriors. Goku, Krillin, and Yamcha quickly came up behind him. Goku calmly stepped up behind the prince. "Vegeta, hey, take it easy. Don't tell me to take it easy, Kakarot." Vegeta screamed as he furiously spun around, letting Gohan go as he did. They could all feel Vegeta's Kai rising at a breakneck pace as he started yelling. "I am not a child that needs to be coddled, so all of you need to back off before I blast every last fucking one of you. Excuse me. You are all the family of Mrs. Bulma briefs." Just like that, Vegeta forgot all about his rant as he strode over to the doctor who was addressing them. "How is she?" he demanded. The doctor swallowed. "Sir, she's Goku," and Krillin both grabbed Vegeta when his hand shot out to grab the doctor by the throat. They pulled him back, earning a stream of curses from the irate prince as he furiously struggled against them. He still couldn't feel Bulma, and he was dangerously close to losing it. "Vegeta, you need to calm down," Goku whispered to him. "You put your hands on one of them and you're getting kicked out, Bulma's husband or not." That worked. Vegeta almost immediately stopped fighting against them, though he was still rigid with tension. He visibly reined his emotion in, bottling everything inside and adopting his military-like, unreadable stoic mask with an ease that only came from decades of practice. He took a moment to get a grip on himself and then nodded. Goku and Krillin both let him go, and they all turned to face the doctor again. "How is she?" Goku patiently asked. "Well," the doctor started, eyeing them all warily before looking down at his chart. "Bulma was severely injured. She is lucky to survive such a terrible accident. The next 24 hours will be very critical." "Where is she?" Vegeta interrupted. "She's in ICU room 4 on the 3rd floor." Vegeta was instantly gone, much to the doctor's shock. Everyone started to follow when Gohan stepped forward, blocking their path. "Let's let him have some time with her alone. I think that would be the most helpful thing for him, then we can see her." "Yeah, that's a good idea," Krillin relented. "Man, this is all rough, all of this going down at the same time. What a bad break for Vegeta." Goku crossed his arms, glancing up towards the ceiling as he tracked Vegeta's energy. Yeah, he quietly agreed. I know. Meanwhile, Vegeta was sitting down in Bulma's hospital room in numbed silence. This entire scene was wrong to him. It was so unbelievably wrong. He was always the one who got hurt in this relationship, not her. He was the one who made full use of the Capsule Corp infirmary, making some kind of visit at least once a month for a sprain, fracture, break. Whatever the case was, with the exception of her pregnancies, the only thing Bulma ever got was an occasional bout of human sickness. But this, Vegeta could barely process how badly injured his wife was. Bulma was a mess of bandages and swelling bruises. The hospital gown she was in made her look so frail, he almost didn't want to get any closer, fearing he would do more harm than good. There were so many machines. His eyes scanned over the cuts and lacerations marring her usually flawless skin. He himself had seen, endured, and inflicted much worse in his life, but seeing her like this was almost unbearable. He drew up his chair as close as he could while his mind raced with all the worst-case scenarios. What if Den didn't recover fast enough to help? What if he lost her in Trunks and was left alone with Bra? He couldn't even fathom it. He was barely a decent parent as it was, and that was only because of Bulma. Hell, he couldn't even go see Trunks without her. Seeing the boy would be acknowledging the truth about his only son, and he wasn't ready to face that yet. Stupid woman, Vegeta mumbled, gently taking her hand in his. Both of their hands were bandaged, which was appropriate considering how badly the day had turned out. Why didn't you wait for me? Hell, why would you even drive in such poor weather? Woman, Trunks is bad enough. I can't. Vegeta stopped before he lost his composure. For a long time he sat there, staring at their joined hands and listening to the machines in the room. It was unbelievable how much he had grown to depend on this woman over the years. But now, for the first time in a long time, he was completely on his own. He had almost forgotten how to do it. Then there was the fact that he was pretty damn sure this was all set up to harm his family. There was no coincidence here anymore. And as a man, it was his responsibility to protect his family. But how could he do that when he didn't even know where to start? Hell, the only thing they even had was Vegeta sat back, frowning in thought as he analyzed all of the events. A minute later, the prince rose to his feet, finally surveying the hospital room for the first time since he got there. He prowled every inch of the room and then opened a small closet by the bathroom. He impatiently tossed things aside, growling in frustration when he saw that there were only extra sterilized supplies and extra hospital gowns, and then he looked up at the top shelf. Levitating up into the air, he found what he was looking for, a plastic tray with Bulma's belongings. Vegeta quickly snatched the tray, digging through it. He grabbed her cell phone, already knowing it would be intact. After all, Bulma had specifically designed her smartphone so it was Saiyan rage-proof, since it was usually the first thing he destroyed when he got pissed at her. He tucked the phone into his own pocket and then pulled out her purse. He immediately went through her purse, an endeavor he had only done once before. Makeup pens, her wallet with her IDs, a mini calculator, strange devices that he had never seen before, and a gun. The prince raised an eyebrow as he pulled it out. By the weight, he knew it was loaded. He looked back at Bulma in surprise. He hadn't even known she owned one of these things. Finally, he put the weapon and everything else back in the purse. Perhaps he mused as he descended back to the floor. I can find where they took the damaged vehicle and search that. If she got that address, then it must be somewhere. He pulled out her cell phone to call his father-in-law for assistance. The old man would know who to call and what strings to pull. Vegeta exhaled impatiently when he saw that Bulma had a key lock on her phone. He rubbed his eyes impatiently. Would anything go his way today? Vegeta tried Trunks' birthday, then Bra's, then Bulma's. Those were the only dates he had memorized. He tried various combinations of those dates and finally just tried their wedding anniversary date on a whim. That worked, and the first thing that came up was an email Bulma sent herself that day before the accident. He frowned and clicked the link, and a copy of the address came up on the screen. She had backed it up first before leaving. Finally, he had his first break of the day. Vegeta stared at the screen for about 5 seconds, committing everything to memory. He then tucked the phone back into his pocket and walked back over to the bed in the room. Sitting down on the edge, he leaned down and gently nuzzled his face against the side of Bulma's neck. I'll take care of everything, I promise, so you just need to get better. I need you to get better, he whispered, drawing back and looking down at her. He tucked a loose blue curl out of her face as he quietly added, nothing else will hurt you or the kids. I swear it on my life. Vegeta then withdrew and left Bulma's room with greater purpose than he entered it. He glanced down the hallway towards where Bulma's friends were all gathered. They had been patiently waiting for him to leave her room before venturing over. The prince frowned at them and walked off in the other direction. A floor below them, Goten leaned back, looking his friend over in concern. Goten was wearing a gown, gloves, and a mask for breathing. He hated looking like he was afraid of Trunks, but the nurse had given him a strict warning. For all his swagger, Goten was still well-conditioned by Chi-Chi to respect female authority figures, so he hadn't argued one bit. Damn, that really sucks, Trunks, Goten quietly said. I know, Trunks responded, looking every bit as exhausted as he felt as he stared tiredly at the ceiling. He was getting tired of these unwanted hospital visits. You think it was one of the guys on your floor, passed you the virus? Doubt it. No one's gotten this sick, not that I know of anyways. I guess, Goten sighed, drawing up his knees and sitting cross-legged in his chair. He had been with his brother when Gohan got the call from Goku. He hadn't been there for his friend the last time around, and he wasn't going to make that mistake again. I'm sure someone will think of a solution though, try not to worry about it too much. Trunks smiled, but it was strained. Who said I was worried? You're not, I mean. I'm worried for you, Goten awkwardly admitted. Trunks rolled his eyes, doing a good job of looking like he couldn't care less about his condition. Years of living and training with Vegeta had drilled in certain things into his mind, and the biggest one was the appearance of strength, even when strength was lacking. Truth was, deep down, he was scared shitless. He was only 18 and was barely starting college. Hell no, he didn't want to die. He didn't want to start getting worse and going through the horrible symptoms as his health declined. But he wasn't going to show that to Goten. Come on, man, don't start getting like that with me. Like you said, our parents will probably think of something. Speaking of, Goten started before both teenagers looked towards the door right as Vegeta strode in. You boy, get out now, he immediately ordered, looking at Goten and gesturing with his thumb over his shoulder. Vegeta, you can't just come in here like that, Goten said in alarm, looking the prince over. You have to wear a mask at least. I don't have to do shit now, get the fuck out of my sight or I will forcibly remove you, am I clear? Vegeta snarled at him. Goten nodded, giving Trunks a last glance before making his exit. You're gonna get in trouble with the nurses. Trunks informed his father as he came up next to his bed. You say that like I'm supposed to care. Vegeta snorted, reaching down to put his hand on Trunks' forehead. The teenager closed his eyes in relief. His father's hand was cool on his hot skin. Vegeta frowned, his eyes looking over that mark on his son's temple, the one that looked just like the brand he used to personally make. He couldn't stand to see it on his son for more than a second, needing to look away as he grumbled, You're still burning up. What the hell are they getting paid for around here? Dad, seriously, it's contagious, Trunks weakly said. The last thing he needed was to pass on the virus to someone else. You should get a mask, don't worry about me, kid, you just worry about yourself, the Saiyan prince said, removing his hand as he turned and walked over to explore the supplies in this room before disappearing into the private bathroom. Besides, I would have gotten it already with our interactions earlier today. If I haven't gotten it yet, then I doubt I'll get it at all. I don't think this affliction affects full-blooded Saiyans. Well, alright, have you seen Mom? Yes, how is she? She'll be fine. And you, how are you doing? What did I say? Worry about yourself, boy, Vegeta growled, emerging from the bathroom. He came back over to Trunks. He gently put a cool washcloth on his son's forehead, making Trunks swallow heavily. Instead of drawing comfort from his father's rare gesture, he only felt raw fear. Trunks couldn't keep his voice steady as he asked, I'm really going to die, aren't I, Dad? No, don't be stupid, Vegeta angrily replied, turning his gaze to the wall. As soon as Dend is able to, he will heal your mother and together we'll all think of something for you. You won't die. But there's no cure, Trunks. I said we will think of something and we will. Vegeta cut in harsher than he intended. Trunks fell silent, only now noticing that his father had yet to look at him for more than a few seconds since he entered. Now just get rest and do what the humans tell you. I have to go take care of some things and check on your sister, but I'll return as soon as I can. Trunks nodded and Vegeta nodded back before leaving the room. Goten was waiting there and he nodded to Vegeta before going back in to see his best friend. The prince sighed deeply. For once he was grateful that there were others who cared for his family as well. At least they wouldn't be alone. But now, he had things to do. Adopting a focused and intense mindset he hadn't felt since his purging days, Vegeta ignored everyone around him as he walked out of the hospital. The wind was blowing fiercely by now, thunder cracking the sky. He stepped out and blasted into the air, his shirt already skin-tight from the rain before he even cleared the block. Vegeta was halfway to his destination, and was so focused on what he was doing and where he was going that his blood pressure shot through the roof when Goku suddenly appeared out of thin air right in front of him. The prince barely managed to stop his flight before crashing right into the younger Saiyan. He would never, ever get used to that damn instant transmission. What the hell, Kakarot? Vegeta hissed, his heart pounding in his chest. In his mind, he was pleading Goku not to tell him any more bad news. If anything happened to Trunks or Bulma in the short time he stepped away from them, he was going to lose it completely. I just wanted to see if you're okay. I know this has been tough, save it. Vegeta cut in, quickly flying past Goku as he continued on, but Goku was flying right next to him, much to the prince's frustration. Where are you going, Vegeta? Goku persisted. It's none of your goddamned business, now get lost. Vegeta screamed, ascending to Super Saiyan 2 as his speed increased exponentially. Goku matched him immediately, and when Vegeta went to pull away again, Goku teleported right in front of him again, blocking his path. Vegeta didn't hesitate, taking a furious swing at his old rival. Much to his surprise, his fist landed square into Goku's jaw in a blow powerful enough to kill a human, if not decapitate them completely. The prince blinked as Goku flew back a few yards, yelping in pain as he cradled his jaw. He hadn't even tried to block it. You let me hit you? Vegeta asked in disbelief. They sparred so many times, Vegeta had lost count. In all that time, Goku had never given him a free shot. The younger Saiyan loved to fight just like he did and hated to lose almost as much. Don't get used to it, Goku chuckled, rubbing his jaw as he grinned. That was just a one-day freebie. Feel better? Sure enough, he did. The day had been so emotionally draining and stressful that throwing that punch was absolutely therapeutic. And Goku was the only one on the planet who could take the blow without either dying on contact or having a broken jaw afterwards. Damned if he would admit that it was helpful, though. Vegeta frowned at him before looking down to see where he was as Goku came closer to him. Seeing that the prince was visibly more relaxed, Goku asked, "So where are you going?" Vegeta sighed. "I am going to find an old employee from Capsule Corp. Bulma was going to see him when she got into her accident. She thought he might know something about what's been going on. Yes, he tried to give her a warning of some kind a long time ago, but her father terminated his employment before he had the chance. I think someone still doesn't want him to get the chance, and that was the true reason for her accident and the fire at headquarters." Goku went to speak when lightning cracked and the rain intensified. The two Saiyans both looked up towards the sky in surprise as thunder rolled. Vegeta looked back at Goku, having to squint as the rain poured down his face. His skin was ice cold from the rain and he wiped at his eyes in vain to clear his vision. It didn't help. Goku was just a bright, golden blur. "And you're sure it's not coincidence?" Goku asked loudly, trying to get his voice over the thunder as the wind seemed to angrily pick up around them. "You don't know why Bulma got into her accident. Trunks swears he's seen visions of this employee's dead daughter. And now my son is dying and my wife might be dying and Dend cannot heal them. None of this is a fucking coincidence, Kakarot. Someone set all of this up, can't you see that? But who could be doing this? Why would anyone do this? I don't know." Vegeta hissed in frustration. "All I know is before Gohan got to me, I ran into some kind of being who seems dead set on revenge against me." "Revenge for what? What else, Kakarot? Likely a purging of his planet or something similar." Goku looked more confused than ever, his wild hair sticking to his forehead. "But you're saying someone survived and tracked you here. Look, I've told you all I know. I don't know what is going on, but I intend to find out. This fool might know something. And I'm going to get to the bottom of this, right now." "I'm coming with you then," Goku said with determination. Vegeta felt like screaming at the night sky. He was wasting so much time. But he recognized that tone for all his faults. Goku was steadfast in his decisions once he made them. Changing his mind would likely require a real fight, and with no Senzu beans and Den's powers shot, it would only do everyone more harm than good. Goku backed up in midair as Vegeta was suddenly right in his face, only inches away. This close to each other now, Goku could see him clearly. He saw and recognized that look in Vegeta's eyes, that unhinged look that he hadn't worn in years. The younger Saiyan warily leaned back as the prince sneered in his face. "Fine. But we are doing this interrogation my way, Kakarot. My family, my rules. They're more important to me than upholding your precious moral code. If you get in my way or try to stop me, I will take you down once and for all. Understand?" Goku nodded, and then Vegeta was flying through the rain again. Goku immediately flew after him, staying a few feet behind him and matching the prince's speed. He had been monitoring Vegeta's Kai since the prince arrived at the hospital, and had gone after him when he felt Vegeta power up as he left the hospital. His intention had been to make sure his fellow full-blooded Saiyan, his friend, was all right. This wasn't what he had imagined walking into. Now all he could do was hope things ended well. Goku ran a hand over his face to clear his vision before squinting through the rain. A few feet ahead of him, a stressed and frustrated Vegeta was splashing through huge puddles while he walked down the flooded street. They weren't too far away from West City, but this area was poor and run down, the complete opposite of the rich city. The houses around them looked like they were hundreds of years old, and though neither Saiyan said anything, they both felt eyes watching them from those houses. Goku scratched his wet hair a bit as he looked around. This was definitely the right street, but there was no home that corresponded to the address Vegeta had. Quickening his pace, he fell in step next to the prince. "And you're sure you have the right address?" Goku asked for the third time. "Yes, you moron, I have the right address." Vegeta snapped, pointing angrily at the last house they had passed. That one over there is 752, so 754 should be close. I dunno, Vegeta, there's nothing but trees beyond this point. It must be here somewhere, Vegeta hissed before his rough voice subtly changed, becoming deadly as he continued. And if we don't find it on foot within the next minute, then I will simply begin asking the neighbors here for their kind assistance. Goku frowned. He didn't like the sound of that, not one bit. There was a razor-sharp edge to Vegeta that had been absent for years from his tone. To his relentless pace, to the way he was glancing around him. The way he was talking, it sounded like he was going to kill every human within a 5-mile radius if he didn't find the address they were looking for. Taking a breath to regroup, Goku forced images of a murderous rampage out of his head and gave Vegeta the benefit of the doubt. After all, the prince was under a substantial amount of stress. Ever the optimist. Goku figured things would get better once they figured out what was really going on. Kakarot, hurry up. Vegeta barked, moving even faster now. They were getting further away from the other houses and were moving through thick trees into what looked like a dense forest. I think I see something over there. Goku squinted. He could just barely see through the fog to make out a large, dark blot in the distance. It could have been a house, but it was hard to tell. You think someone actually lives out here? Only one way to find out. The two Saiyans quietly walked on, deeper into the forest area, walking through the mud while avoiding random branches and leaves. They both trudged through thick mud now, dirtying their pants from the knees down. Finally, there was a small clearing where the trees stopped. They were standing on grass when Vegeta stopped walking, staring at the house in front of them. Goku came up next to him, looking the house over curiously. 754, he asked. Looking at the old mailbox that was barely standing up. He leaned in close to see it better. That was the number, right, Vegeta? 8chen, well, this is it. Looks abandoned though. Vegeta silently agreed. The house was 3 stories tall and had long lost its luster, it seemed. Still, he was undeterred. This was the right address and the only place he could think of where he could get some answers, and he wasn't leaving until he did. Without a word, he walked on, approaching the house with Goku on his heels. I'm not sensing anyone, are you, Vegeta? Goku warily asked, not comfortable with exploring someone's property uninvited. Kakarot, there was once a time when I relied completely on my scouter to learn about my enemies, Vegeta responded, walking up the steps to the front porch. He immediately moved to a window, trying to peek in as he continued. Then I came here and I realized scouters were overrated. Now I've come in contact with a new enemy. And have found that sensing energy is also overrated. Goku blinked a bit. Well. If that's the case, then I should knock to make sure no one's here. Sure, Kakarot, you do that, Vegeta blandly responded before hopping over the porch rail to land on the grass. The prince started walking along the side of the house to scope it out. His fingers were itching to beat someone to death for answers, but first he wanted to see the layout of the old house from the outside. Know all the routes of escape and cut them off. Frieza's mechanical voice rang in his mind. Vegeta grit his teeth, forcing the memories away, even while he instinctively did just as he was once trained to do. Meanwhile, Goku knocked on the front door. He tried listening to something inside the house, but it was raining too hard for him to tell. The Saiyan stood there for a while and then knocked again. For some reason, the outside temperature was going up and it was starting to make him sweat. Hello, is anyone home? Goku politely called out. Vegeta was coming up behind him, done with his house check as Goku knocked a third time. The younger Saiyan then turned towards the prince and shrugged. Well, no one's answering, so I don't think his words were cut off when Vegeta violently kicked the wooden door open, almost tearing the door off its hinges. The prince then stalked inside, leaving Goku wide-eyed and blinking in the doorway. Well, that's one way to do it. Goku relented, going in behind Vegeta. The drenched warriors hadn't taken more than 5 steps inside the old house when their golden hair faded to black at the same time, and not by their command. Both Saiyans shot each other startled looks. Vegeta frowned, raising his hand up and trying to summon his Kai to no avail. Shit, he hissed under his breath. What in the world is going on? Goku asked in bewilderment, unable to summon up his own Kai as well. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Vegeta growled, brushing his wet hair out of his face and looking around. The house was much bigger than it looked, but it was deserted. No way anyone could have been living here recently. His sensitive nose was overwhelmed by the smell of dust and there were cobwebs clinging to the old furniture. He took a breath, readied himself, and then boomed out, I'm looking for Tyler X How. If he's here or you know who he is, show yourself. Silence. Both Saiyans were straining their hearing, but it was hard to hear anything over the rain. Vegeta looked over at Goku and gestured towards the door. Goku went back and quietly closed it so they could hear better. Unfortunately, they were now left in darkness. Outside, a flash of lightning cracked the night sky, briefly lighting the house for a split second. Goku tried a light switch by the door, then shook his head at the prince, silently telling him there was no electricity. Vegeta waited a few seconds and then yelled, "If anyone is here, I strongly suggest you come out right now. Don't make him find you because you won't like the Resulshit Kakarot. Get away from me." Vegeta furiously hissed, rubbing the back of his neck. The small hairs had stood up, his instinctive response to someone walking too close to him. He spun around to berate his fellow Saiyan, but his words died on his tongue when he saw no one there. He swallowed, a chill running down his spine. "Kakarot," Vegeta called out, forcing his voice not to show that he was a little shaken. He glanced back towards the door. No, he would have heard that open. The other Saiyan was still in the house unless he used that damn instant transmission to run away. "Kakarot, you idiot, where are you?" he called out again, stronger and angrier this time. "I'm in here." Vegeta followed his friend's voice, deep down grateful that he was stuck with the younger Saiyan. He had wanted to come alone, but he had to admit to himself that in a pinch it was always good to have his old rival there on his side. He rounded the entrance to the living room and scowled when he saw Goku crouched down by a wooden table. "Here, just trying to get something so we can see," Goku said, easily ripping a leg off the table. "These will last a little bit." "Chen," Vegeta's eye twitched as he proudly added, "I need no such thing, fool. I can see fine." "Oh, I know, but this'll help anyways. Here, take it." He tossed it to Vegeta. The prince grumbled under his breath a little and then scraped the wooden leg hard on the floor, igniting it on fire and creating a makeshift temporary torch. He wet the bottom part with his shirt, ensuring the fire wouldn't move too far down. The prince then turned around, surveying his surroundings. The light helped to steel his nerves. But without being able to use his own Kai, Vegeta felt naked, and strangely like a sitting target. Someone or something was one step ahead of him, like a hunter playing with its prey, and it was unnerving. Goku stood up with his own makeshift torch, coming up next to Vegeta. "So did you hear anything?" "No," Vegeta admitted as his scowl grew. He stared at the shadows created by the light from the fires, scanning the living room over almost compulsively. "But something's here that's draining our Kai. Let's search the building, even if no one is here. Perhaps we can find some clues." Goku awkwardly shifted his weight. "I dunno, Vegeta, this place is kinda creepy. What are you, a child? We didn't come all this way to leave now." Vegeta barked. He swept his torch and ordered, "Now you search this downstairs area and I will search upstairs." But Goku didn't continue his protest when Vegeta headed straight for the stairs, marching up with a purpose. The younger Saiyan shrugged, and then started exploring the living room, not knowing what he was looking for. But maybe if luck was on his side, he could find something to eat. Vegeta got to the top of the stairs and his nose immediately registered the smell of fresh blood. The prince tightened his grip on the broken wooden leg, barely noticing when little splinters dug into his bandaged palm. He looked left, then right. Finally, he chose to head to the right. The first door on his left was slightly ajar. Vegeta brought up his torch close to it, and almost recoiled when he saw the engraving on the door. Reaching out with his free hand, the prince lightly traced out the markings on the wood with his fingertips. It only took him a second to recognize it. "This is what was scratched on our bathroom mirror at home," he suddenly realized. Only they weren't faint scratchings here. No, on this door it looked like someone carved out the markings with bloody nails, desperately, as though it made the difference between life and death. Vegeta scowled, staring at the markings and desperately trying to remember what they meant. He stood there for almost a whole minute before shaking his head in anger and frustration. It had been too long, and he must have only seen it on a glance because he couldn't think of anything. Slowly, Vegeta pushed the door open, raising his torch to see better as he entered the room. He was in a girl's bedroom, and his eyes widened as he read the large, old, blood-marked words staining the wall, sprawled over old posters and pictures of a teenage girl. "Stay out of this. Stay out of this." Vegeta read, his eyebrows drawing together in confusion. Stay out of what? What the hell had these people gotten themselves into? He was hardly aware of the increasing heat in the room, even though he was sweating profusely. Slowly, he inched his way back in until he was at an old dresser. On top were pictures covered in dust. He picked up an old frame, examining the teenaged girl in the photo. In the bottom right corner was her name in printed fancy calligraphy: Keegan. The prince frowned as he stared at the picture. This had to be the girl Trunks was talking about, but there was nothing special about her that Vegeta could see. She looked like a normal girl heading off to college. Vegeta's head snapped towards the ceiling when he suddenly heard wood creaking above him. Footsteps, had to be. He quickly stalked out of the room, yelling out, "Who's up there? You can either come down on your own and answer some questions, or I'll go up there and beat the answers out of you." His heart was pounding as he waited for some kind of answer, even while he swept his rapidly burning out torch back and forth, looking for a way upstairs. Only then did he realize that it was way too quiet in the house. Frowning, Vegeta looked down over the rail and yelled out, "Kakarot, where are you?" He waited to hear something back from his fellow Saiyan, but instead heard the creaks again from the attic, louder this time. Vegeta growled, examining the ceiling again like a tiger ready to pounce. He was about to pound his way through the ceiling when he spotting a handle on the ceiling several yards away. He leapt up and grabbed it, yanking it down and immediately displaying a short flight of stairs leading up. In record time, the prince shot up the stairs, eager to catch who this was red-handed. As soon as he got to the attic, though, his blood ran cold. His hand wasn't quite steady as he raised the burning wooden leg to see better, and chills went down his back from what he saw. Meanwhile, Goku was downstairs and prowling through the kitchen, anxiously waiting for Vegeta to come back downstairs so they could leave. He kept hearing weird creaks in the wood, and it was creeping him out. He had already checked out the downstairs area as requested, and now wanted to get something to eat before they went back to the hospital. Of course, there was nothing to eat, but that didn't stop him from looking. Finally, he decided to go see what Vegeta was doing. As he was just exiting the kitchen, though, he heard an furious echo of voices from behind him say in unison, "Get out." Goku yelped and spun around, raising the burning wooden table leg to see. But there was no one there. He tried to sense someone's Kai but couldn't sense anything. His eyes narrowed. Though he was much more mellow and easygoing than Vegeta, he was still a Saiyan. He didn't particularly care for the challenge and threat in the ominous words. His voice was brave when he called out again, "Who's there?" When he got no response, he slowly started walking back into the kitchen while he added, "My friend and I just want to talk. He's worried about his family, and he thinks someone here might know something. Will you please come out so we can talk?" Silence. Rain poured outside as Goku scratched the back of his head a bit in confusion. He then brought 2 fingers to his forehead to find Vegeta, but before he could, a door he hadn't noticed in the corner slowly creaked open. Goku went over to investigate and saw that there were steps leading down into a pitch-black basement. He gulped a little and called out, "Is someone down there?" When no one responded, Goku slowly walked down the stairs to investigate. Meanwhile, Vegeta was in the attic and surrounded by Bulma. There were hundreds of pictures of Bulma all along the attic wall, going up to the triangle ceiling everywhere he could see. Pictures from when she was a child all the way up to around the time he met her. News clippings taped over pictures of awards she won, speeches she gave, donations she made. It was like a twisted shrine. He slowly turned around in a full 360 degrees, shaken by the disturbing level of infatuation towards his wife. He was drawn to one picture in particular, and upon further examination it made him feel sick. It was of Bulma when she was visibly pregnant with Trunks, beaming into the camera while she cradled her large stomach in her hands. But the prince wasn't focused on his beautiful wife, nor was he feeling the usual pang of regret that always struck his heart when he saw pictures of the pregnancy he had been absent for. Instead, Vegeta was horrified for the first time in decades as he reached out to touch the picture. On the old photograph over her stomach was smeared blood, fresh, warm blood. As soon as his fingers touched the blood, the fire on the wood ran out and he was in darkness. The prince snarled in frustration, throwing down the used wood to the floor where it broke into pieces. Spinning on his heel, he stalked back towards the steps to leave this place. His mind was spinning, and he couldn't sort things out rationally. The only thing he knew was the horrible feeling in his stomach of pure anxiety. He hadn't gotten answers, but he'd seen more than enough. He needed to get back to his family as soon as possible. Vegeta was about to descend the steps when they raised and snapped back shut, with so much force that he staggered back a couple of steps. He tried forcing the steps to lower again, furiously kicking at it to no avail. He was officially pissed off now, sweating profusely as he straightened again, glaring down at the floor. He was getting sick and tired of having his strength randomly zapped. In frustration, he was about to reach out to Goku mentally to order the younger Saiyan to teleport them both out, when lightning flashed. The entire attic was lit up in the flash of light, and Vegeta stumbled backwards in shock when a dark, solid body with red eyes was outlined right in front of him. The prince landed sitting down, wide-eyed. Lightning flashed again, and he realized the entire attic was filled with more dark shadows, all of them with those haunting red eyes. An army of vengeance staring at him with blank hatred, the likes of which he'd never seen even with his hate-filled past. "This family is gone. They can't save you now," that childlike, ominous voice spoke. Vegeta's teeth were painfully grinding together. He wanted nothing more than to kick someone's teeth down their throat. Especially whoever that voice belonged to. He was being toyed with and it enraged him. The prince struggled to keep his anger in check, forcing his voice to remain calm as he said, "Look, If you just tell me who you are and what you want from me, we want revenge and we will have it. Vegeta couldn't help the vicious snarl that rose from his chest before he roared, you will have nothing. You think you can take my Kai from me forever? Fools, I will find a way around it, and when I do, your power cannot save you here, Prince Vegeta. You and your family will die just like this family did. I don't give a shit about what happened to this human family. Vegeta hissed, rapidly shooting up to his feet. He looked like a madman shouting at shadows. But he didn't care. He balled up his fists and growled, but so help me if you harm my family, your sins are not and will never be forgiven, and your family will pay for them. Vegeta flew forward without warning and with his inhuman speed, lowering his shoulder to barrel through whoever this was threatening his family. But he met nothing but air, his momentum sending him crashing hard into the wooden wall. Normally, he would have probably barreled right through the wall, but now it felt like he crashed into the toughest metal in the universe. The prince landed on the floor, pictures of Bulma falling over him as he slowly got up to his hands and knees, shaking his head rapidly. His eyes were watering from the hard impact as he looked over, seeing the shadows still staring at him. Who are you? He rasped. Retribution. With that, Vegeta felt hundreds of powerful, invisible hands grab his shirt, roughly hauling him up to his feet. He furiously tried pulling away and resisting, but his hands weren't grabbing anything except air. He had never felt so defenseless, but he didn't have enough time to think of what to do before he was spun around and violently thrown headfirst right through the unforgiving wooden wall of the attic. Vegeta crashed hard through a thick tree on his way to the ground, landing heavily in thick mud. He stubbornly tried getting up to his hands and knees as his arms shook. But the pain in his head was utterly unbearable and he collapsed. Meanwhile, Goku had felt the stirrings of panic in his fellow Saiyan and had been unsuccessfully trying to knock down the door leading out of the basement. His instant transmission wasn't working much to his frustration. He was trapped and helpless to do anything about it. His head snapped up when he heard a horrible crash. It sounded like thunder, but if there was anything Goku was a genius in aside from fighting and eating, it was nature. That wasn't thunder, and he knew he had to get out immediately. With renewed purpose, Goku pulled back his bruised and bloodied fist, grit his teeth together, and with a shout he slammed his fist into the door as hard as he could. The door blasted right off its hinges, spinning top over bottom before crashing into the far wall. Goku ran out of the basement, and then looked out the window. He squinted a bit, and then saw the broken tree with someone outside on the ground. He squinted more, and then his eyes shot open when he recognized that unmistakable hairstyle. Goku ran outside into the storm which still hadn't let up. He knelt down next to Vegeta, forcing the smaller Saiyan on his back. The prince weakly turned his head away. Vegeta, are you all right? Goku asked in bewilderment and concern, looking his friend over. He had no idea who was strong enough to hurt one of the most powerful warriors in the universe. He looked up to examine the house, blinking when he saw the busted attic. Vegeta took a few deep breaths and then slowly tried to get up. Goku helped him sit up, and fortunately for him the prince was too out of it to notice or resist. Vegeta squinted his eyes open as he brought one hand up to his forehead, instinctively checking for blood. But there was only mud and rain on his hand that he could see. He wiped his forearm across his face, ridding the mud off him and tuning into what Goku was saying. Go see if Dend has regained his powers, you don't look so good. No, Vegeta roughly interrupted, shaking his head both in disagreement and to shake off his dizziness. I have to check on Bra. But Vegeta, she's with Bulma's parents. She'll be fine and you have to. I said no, Kakarot. Vegeta growled, slowly forcing himself up to his feet. I have to bring my daughter back with me. I have to be with all three of them. I have to protect them from whatever this is. All right, we'll go get Bra so you feel better, Goku gently said, putting a hand on Vegeta's shoulder for both teleportation and to steady the prince, who didn't look exactly stable on his feet. I don't need your goddamn to. Vegeta started before his surroundings suddenly changed to a fancy hotel suite. He blinked, and then scowled as he irritably finished, help. Oh my, Bunny's surprised voice rang out. Both Saiyans turned around to face Bulma's mother. I didn't know you two were stopping by. Vegeta wanted to check on Bra, Goku informed her, and then he looked the prince over with a careful eye. I'll go see how Den's doing. Vegeta couldn't respond before Goku vanished. The prince rolled his eyes and sat down heavily on a leather sofa, uncaring that he was drenched and covered in mud. He reached up to brush his hair out of his face. Before holding his aching head in his hand, he could feel his daughter though, and for that he was relieved. Bulma's father went to see her at the hospital, Bunny informed him, setting a glass of water on the stand next to the table. He said it would be best if I stayed here with Bra since we didn't want to upset her. She doesn't know anything yet. I wanted to go, but the roads, they're so clogged with the weather. Oh, how are they, Vegeta? Will they be all right? She asked anxiously, and for the first time in a while she looked and sounded her age. Bulma and Trunks will be fine, now bring Bra out here, Vegeta gruffly ordered, not even bothering to look up. Bunny patted his shoulder in comfort and then disappeared to do as he asked. Daddy, Bra shouted. Vegeta looked up and saw his daughter skid to a stop in front of him. She had clearly been intent on launching herself into him, but she froze when she saw him. Her blue eyes scanned him over and her nose crinkled up. Yua, why are you so dirty? Vegeta ignored what she said, reaching out and grabbing her small hand. He pulled her closer to examine her better. Her blue hair was pulled back into a tight ponytail, and she was dressed for bed in a brand new, matching set of blue pajamas. She was holding a new stuffed rabbit in her right hand, hugging it closely. Daddy, Chen. The prince blinked a bit and then scowled when Bra got right in his face, examining his dark eyes with a scientific curiosity that was definitely inherited from her mother's side. Your eyes look funny. Did Goku beat you up again? Vegeta's gaze darkened considerably. That fool doesn't beat me up, brat, I'm fine. Oh well, okay, look, Grandma and Grandpa bought me this bunny at the zoo before it closed down. Isn't it pretty? Bra excitedly asked, practically shoving the rabbit into his face. Can we go home now so I can show Mommy? Her father hesitated, uncomfortable with the position he found himself in. His intention had been to bring his daughter back with him, to have her easily within reach. It had slipped his mind that he couldn't bring her back to the hospital without filling her in. Bra, listen, Vegeta started, deciding to just be blunt and get things over with as he wiped the mud on his hands off using his jeans. Your brother is sick and your mother had a small car accident. They are both going to be fine, but I need you to come with me to the hospital to be with them. So get your things. Oh no, Bra wailed, her blue eyes filling with tears. Mommy and Trunks are going to be fine, Vegeta roughly interrupted, uncertain if he was trying to convince her or convince himself. He sighed and his tone wasn't as harsh when he added, don't worry, child, everything will be fine. Now get your things, don't make me tell you again. She sniffed a little, brushing at her tears while she nodded. The little girl then turned around to head back into the bedroom of the hotel suite where Bunny was waiting for her. Vegeta was left alone, physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted. He tiredly looked out the window, trying to wrap his mind around what had happened back at the X-How residence. What had really happened to that family, and what was the link with his own family? Vegeta closed his eyes, leaning against the armrest and massaging the side of his head. He couldn't think straight at the moment, so brooding wasn't going to help. All that mattered was keeping his family safe and making sure his wife and his son were back on their feet soon. The prince flinched in surprise when Goku reappeared in front of him. They both made eye contact, and Goku shook his head. Still a no-go, he needs a little more time. He's going to need to regain all his powers if he's going to help Bulma alone. How long? A day or two. Chen, Vegeta grunted. It wasn't ideal, but Bulma could last a little longer. He knew she could. The prince looked back out the window listlessly as Bunny and Bra walked out, ready to go in hand. Bra had her pink book bag on, with her rabbit barely stuffed in there. Take all of us back to the hospital then, Kakarot. No sense in anyone staying here anymore. Goku nodded. He put 2 fingers up to his forehead and then took Bunny's free hand. Bra looked towards her father and extended her hand to him. Vegeta immediately took it, giving it a comforting squeeze as he nodded to her. Their surroundings changed to the familiar hospital. Vegeta instinctively sneered in disgust at the assaulting smell of this place. He backed up a little when their small group was surrounded by the usual gang of friends, tuning them out. He cocked his head to one side and sensed out Bulma and Trunks. They were weaker than when he had left. Turning around, he stalked away to a nearby bathroom, desperately needing to be alone. The prince paced in the men's bathroom, feeling very much like a bomb about to explode. He rotated his neck as his fingers twitched for some kind of release for his stress. In the past, that had been through horrible violence and plenty of spilled blood. Nowadays, unwinding consisted of either training under high gravity or losing himself in Bulma's body. Then again, nowadays, he never felt this type of stress. And his time under Frieza hadn't prepared him for protecting a family he loved deeply against an enemy he couldn't even lay a hand on. Vegeta stopped pacing in front of one mirror, gripping the edges of the sink so tightly, the ceramic cracked under his fingers. He stood there for a few seconds in a tense silence, before violently tearing off the entire sink from the wall. He then hurled it against the glass, shattering everything to pieces. It wasn't the best way to vent, but at that moment in time he didn't care. It felt good to break something. Absent-mindedly, he wished that it were bones he was breaking. He shook his head to rid the thought, pacing again as his mind unwillingly went to dark places. Suddenly a voice chuckled from behind him. Good thing you guys have money to pay for that. Vegeta spun around and immediately raised a glowing hand towards the voice, making Gohan raise his hands up. Hey, easy, he gently said before extending what was in his hands towards the prince. Got you some dry clothes. The Saiyan hybrid paused and frowned a little. You okay, Vegeta? I'm fine, Vegeta hissed, only now realizing that he was out of breath. His heart was pounding almost painfully hard, but he forced himself to calm down. Stalking up towards Gohan, he yanked the clothes out of his hands as he demanded, "How are they?" "Bulma's all right, she's hanging in there." "Trunks, he's been sleeping mostly, talking a lot in his sleep. Does he normally do that?" "No," Vegeta answered, hastily changing right where he was with his back towards Gohan. "What's he saying? That's the thing we don't really know. It doesn't sound like any language I've ever heard." "Chen, I'll check on him." "All right, well, I'm going to leave with Videl for a while, help her get Pan situated. I'll be back later, okay?" "Whatever," Vegeta said with indifference, leaving his mudded clothes on the floor while he cleaned up a little at an unbroken sink. "Stay at home, come back, I don't give a shit, do what you want." Gohan sighed, watching as the prince angrily stalked out of the bathroom. He looked over at the mess on the floor, shaking his head, and then headed out himself. When he came back a few hours later, Gohan found that everyone not directly related him or to the Briefs family had left. Dr. Briefs and Bunny, both looking incredibly aged after the stressful day, were looking after Bra. They had used their influence and money to get themselves comfortably situated at the hospital, and they were asleep when Gohan checked them. Goten was still in Trunks' room, allowed to stay there only because the Briefs had requested it, and both teenagers were asleep. Gohan wasn't surprised when he peeked into Bulma's room to find Vegeta sitting next to her bed, awake even though he looked dead tired. He was holding his wife's hand, watching her for any signs of her coming around. Gohan sighed and then quietly walked away, going to talk to his father about where he had gone that day with Vegeta. Vegeta, of course, noticed Gohan's presence when he came up to the door, but he didn't acknowledge it. His mind was racing with so many things that he could barely keep them straight. There were so many unanswered questions he still had. At the crux of it was the X-How family and how they played into all of this. He had some theories based on things he'd seen today, but nothing concrete. Still, he wasn't terribly concerned with a family who apparently had already died. His biggest worries were the unknown enemy lurking in the shadows, the fatal disease plaguing his son, and getting his wife healed. An alien aura, Dend had said. As hard as it was to believe, it must have been some survivors from an old purge, with strange alien powers that he hadn't seen before. Vegeta lowered his head to the edge of the bed and sighed, his mouth millimeters from Bulma's fingers. His head was still hurting from the impact earlier, a sign that he needed to think of a new strategy to approach this enemy. Brute force wasn't going to cut it, not this time, but his wife would help him figure it all out. She always did. Retribution, time would tell just who would get theirs.